Right, folks, this is a new podcast from the two mics, and I'm going to give you old energy boy, MG, to introduce it.
Yeah, we've edited out all the nonsense from Mike Porky Parry, so it might be a bit shorter than usual.
Ha, 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 ha. You cannot transport a lorry load of bread in the saddlebag of a bike.
Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the two mics on Talk Sport. Another scintillating night of Champions League football has left Barcelona bedraggled and bounced out at the quarter-final stage again and in need of an injection of talent. Hard to believe Messi, Neymar and Suarez couldn't score a goal in 180 minutes against Juventus. We'll be asking Mark Donaldson why. Plus we'll find out while Vladimir Putin is apparently working on building a robot army to send up to space. We've got an expert in Houston. He'll tell us why these robots are armed and dangerous. 08717 22 3344. Plus, it's Porkyvision night as well, and with so many TV shows finishing this week, you'd better listen out for the spoiler alarm, just in case Porky gives the game away, in case you don't want to hear it. You're listening to the two mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics, and I'm delighted to say it's time to say a very, very good morning to Mr. Mike, a Porky, a Parry. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
And a very good morning to you, Mike, as well.
And might I just say, thank you very much indeed, because for the first time ever, you've made me a cup of tea.
No.
That's very kind.
No, I didn't make it.
What do you mean didn't make it?
I didn't make it.
You just brought me a cup of tea.
I just brought it in because the chap was on the way, and I just relieved him of it to bring it in for you. I don't make tea.
It's half a cup, I have to say.
Is it? Yeah. Well, you have to take that up to somebody else. Yeah, that's not part of my duties round here.
All right. Well, I was trying to thank you for it, but nevertheless, if you don't wish to be thanked, what can I say?
Well, you know.
Well.
Say whatever you want.
Well.
Anyway, Barcelona.
Are you all right?
Barcelona.
You're okay? You seem a bit subdued.
No, I'm not subdued. What should I be subdued about?
Well, you're normally not as subdued as this. You're normally firing all cylinders out of a cannon, attacking me for some reason or other. For something I've said in the open you don't agree with.
No, I have nothing to attack you about. There's no problem at all.
Really?
I mean, I think you have a bit of a guilty conscience there, don't you? You know that permanently you are making statements which don't altogether add up.
What, are you suggesting what you mean like you? What you mean like saying things that aren't true?
No. I mean, when you start talking about Ronald Koeman going to Barcelona, because it's something you dreamt up in
It's not
your
something
sleep,
I dreamt up. It has been reported at great length in Spanish newspapers, okay? It has been talked about on every sports station around the world that has an interest in
football. And you have your own independent evidence, do you?
I certainly do.
Yeah, all right. Where do you get that from,
then?
Well,
I can't tell you,
Oh, no, because you can't tell me, because you haven't got it.
Well, no, because I don't go around revealing my sources. I mean, no doubt if you were asked to reveal
my sources,
you were asked to reveal your sources, you'd be straight down the police station to give them up.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, have some journalistic ethics, and I don't always say where I get my information from. And that is my right to do.
Yeah.
And I think you would be foolish to completely and utterly write off the idea that Ronald Koeman is being sought by Barcelona. He's one of about 4 or 5 people they would like, and they may or may not get him this time, but they'll get him eventually.
Well, they can like as much as they want, I mean, some of the favourite headlines in newspapers are, Jose, wants to bring so-and-so to Manchester United, Conte wants to bring...
Well, Real Madrid want to get David De Gea, and I suspect that this time they will probably do that.
Oh, I think they definitely will for 60
million
quid
there you are.
To be a
Well, that's
bargain.
one of those newspaper headlines that's been going on for quite some time.
Yes, except for the fact that there's a body of evidence there to show that De Gea did sell, give it one more season, but if it doesn't improve, then I am definitely off ski to the opportunities that I have at Real Madrid. That is in fact.
Here's another one. The chief football writer of the Daily Mirror says that Chelsea fear a record-breaking £650,000 a week bid for Diego Costa from China.
Yeah.
And basically that has screwed up his form.
Yeah, but Costa's been useless, hasn't he, over the last sort of 3 months? So I think Chelsea would be very happy to offload him from the wage bill, to be honest, because he's not really producing a lot at the moment, is he?
Well, I mean, the point is that he's probably leaving as well. Real to break the bank for De Gea, which it says on the back page of the Sun, £60 million world record offer.
Yeah.
All of these stories are written about, and most of them turn out to be the case after a little while.
Well, I've always said with newspapers, they don't print untruths, and where there is smoke, there is fire.
Exactly.
It's just getting to the source of the fire sometimes,
and that's why I'm counselling you not to be too dismissive of the Ronald Koeman story, because eventually it will happen.
Well, it won't actually, but never mind. I saw you grinning earlier when I mentioned Ulaanbaatar.
Well, I burst out laughing,
I'm
actually,
not sure
because
why.
as an aside, as we were leaving the studio with Danny Kelly and Jason Cundy on the sports bar,
Yes.
you murmured something about wanting to book your holidays to Ulaanbaatar.
Well, do you know
Why
what?
would you want to go on holiday there?
Well, ever since I was about 18, when I was in the upper six at the King's School Chester.
The upper six, yes.
And I regard myself as very, very clever to have found out that one of the most remote cities in the world, the most remote capital, was Ulaanbaatar.
Yes.
So for about the next 30 years, I used as a pickup line in nightclubs, would you like to join me this weekend? I'm off to my holiday home in Ulaanbaatar.
You used to actually use that line.
Yeah, I did,
This is when you weren't using the line, have you just heard of Elvis has died? I am, in fact, Noel Edmonds' brother.
He's dead, Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. It was one of my varieties, but I was just saying...
How many did you have?
Quite a few. And I used to say, how about a romp in the yurt in Ulaanbaatar? And
the yurt?
That used to quite confuse
I
young
quite
ladies.
fancy staying in a yurt, actually.
Well, the point is, you won't believe this, but the reason I said you're going to book my holiday in Ulaanbaatar is that from me talking about it as a mystical place that nobody ever heard of and the most remote capital in the world, and the people, so primitive that they didn't know that you could spread butter on bread and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
It's not Ulaanbaatar, is it?
No, it's not. No, it's Ulaanbaatar. In fact, I found out for the first time in one of my leisure and travel journals today that Aeroflot are now offering full week holidays in Ulaanbaatar.
Well, why wouldn't they?
And you go via Moscow.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you?
The airfare alone costs £850 return.
Okay, how long does it take?
That's amazing.
How long does it take?
What, to get to Ulaanbaatar?
Yeah.
Well,
I thought you might.
It's in the middle of Mongolia, so quite a long time.
Well,
I
thought you would have looked this up. So you have to change planes, do you?
You change it, you fly from. You have to get yourself to Moscow, because nobody flies from here to Ulaanbaatar.
So what? You have to get the flight from Moscow on Aeroflot. Well, they don't get you to Moscow.
No. Well, I suppose you can fly from London to Moscow, obviously on Aeroflot. But the actual package starts. It's £850 return.
Yeah,
just the airfare alone.
Well, from Moscow to
Ulaanbaatar.
Well, hang on. What sort of journals are these that you're getting, which are showing you for airfares from Moscow? I mean, nobody gets those in this country.
No,
nobody gets those.
No, this is presented as a package holiday. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but
the package starts in Moscow.
Well,
now, to get to Moscow and back, I know this for a fact, club class is going to cost you about £1,650.
Yeah, but my point is my question to you is how is it that you've got your hands on package deals which are available only to Russians?
Oh, no, it's not. It's available to everybody. And you've got to understand
a package deal means that you pay for the package, which gets you from where you are to where you want to go. No, you don't have to go somewhere else to get to
I don't agree, because sometimes people take cruises in the Caribbean,
but
they have to get themselves to the Caribbean first.
No, they normally They normally include the flights as well.
Yeah. Anyway, listen. Do you know how they advertise it? Do you want to go to the middle of nowhere?
The middle of nowhere?
Yeah, they say Ulaanbaatar is in the middle of nowhere.
Really?
So why don't you go?
Yeah.
It's in the middle of nowhere, right?
Well, what's the selling point of going to the middle of nowhere?
Well, the selling point is apparently it is so peaceful because there's no noise,
right?
There's no traffic, there's no trains, there's no aeroplanes flying over, there's no crowds,
apart from the ones bringing people in.
Yeah, that's right, there's no but they just land at the airport and then you get on a camel and you gallop off into the middle of the Gobi Desert, The
Gobi Desert?
Yeah, somewhere near Ulaanbaatar.
Yeah.
And what happens is, the biggest selling point, which is what would turn me off altogether, is you take your own yurt with you on your camel.
Yeah.
And then, each night you set it up.
You have to put it up.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like much of a package holiday, to be honest.
No, not to me.
I mean, my idea of a package holiday is you get on a plane at an airport in Britain.
Yes.
You fly to a place where it's nice, warm and sunny, and you've got a beach.
That's right, yeah.
And you don't have to do anything.
If you go on foot, you can take a gur, which is a small version of a yurt.
Oh, right.
And a gur.
A gur?
Yeah.
It's like a one-man yurt.
It's a one-man yurt, that's right, yeah. But here's typically how...
It's basically a city, isn't it, Ulaanbaatar, in Mongolia?
It's not, it's an area.
Right.
It's like an area, it's not even a city. It's got like shacks and yurts and things. It doesn't really have any high-rise buildings.
Okay.
So here, just to...
Well, I'm looking at a picture of it here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It looks like a city to me.
Yeah, it's not much of a city.
That's Ulaanbaatar.
That's a bit of it, yeah. But no, here...
It's got a bridge. It's got a massive, what looks like a hotel complex on one side of it.
No, I don't think so.
It's got a skyscraper microbes all over the place.
Anyway, what happens when you get there?
About? There's nobody in there yurt in this place.
Listen. What happens when you get there is you land in Ulaanbaatar Airport, right?
So it's got an airport.
Well, it's on the
remote.
edge. Yeah,
it's a completely remote
well,
area.
Hang on. Lots of places got airports, but only get 3 aeroplanes that land a week or something.
Well,
you know?
it's probably slightly bigger than that.
So anyway, what happens is you get off your aeroplane and you get onto the Trans-Mongolian Railway.
Yes.
From Ulaanbaatar.
Why not?
And, I mean, it is literally, it's like something out of the Wild West, okay? Yeah.
There's over 1 million people living there, you know.
Hang on. It trundles around for 8 hours, right? And then you get off.
It's a bit like trying to get in here from Surrey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is. And then you get off in the middle of the desert,
right,
okay?
Right.
And then what happens then is this bus, which is about 20 years old, sort of chugs up.
Uh-huh.
And you get onto that, and then that drives you for 2 hours deeper into the desert.
Yeah. So this is a holiday actually in Outer Mongolia you're talking about?
Yes.
Not in Ulaanbaatar.
Right. Well, you have to go to Ulaanbaatar to get there.
But Ulaanbaatar is quite a built-up area.
Yeah, but then...
And they've got hotels and everything.
Yeah, but then what happens is, right, what happens then is...
I've got the 10 best Ulaanbaatar hotels here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not real, is it? And then
Yes.
and then you get on a camel, right?
Yeah.
And some of these camels are painted. They're, they're like... like the heraldry used to be the thing on big horses in this country in the Middle Ages.
You had the right heraldry sign, the symbol.
Yeah, the camels are the same.
It's in the time, by the way.
Don't worry about that. And
are they in the European Union, Ulaanbaatar?
No, they're not, no. No, definitely
They're
not.
not in the Eurovision Song Contest, are they?
What'd you say?
Are they in the Eurovision Song Contest?
No, they're not.
Are you sure?
No, definitely not. No.
Right.
And then what happens is you sort of gallop around on this camel for about 5 days, right?
Yeah.
Not really going anywhere fast. And
they've got a Best Western.
Who have?
In Ulaanbaatar.
Have they?
Yeah.
Well, that's
and a
nice,
Ramada in.
That's very surprising,
Yeah.
I say. And the great thing about it is, right, you can, when you get your camel...
Yeah.
And you say, what's my camel's name? Your camel's name is anything you want to call it for those 5 days.
Right.
So you can christen your camel anything you like.
Anything you want.
Yeah.
You call it Rooney if you wanted to.
Well, you wouldn't, would you? Because that'd be quite insulting,
You might do.
But it seems to me they've moved into the commercial world, which I think is a good thing. 'Cause when people enter the commercial world, they're entering civilization, aren't they?
Well, I think you should definitely go. I think at some point or other, when we both have a holiday opportunity this year, you should pop out there on a fact-finding mission.
Well, why not?
And do pictures on the camel. It'd be great.
Do you know you take a shower?
Porky goes into a yurt.
Do you know you take a shower?
I don't know.
They literally boil water in a bucket over a fire, and then they do the old Wild West thing. They hoist up in a tree.
Yeah.
They knock holes in the bottom of the bucket. So the water...
with a gun?
No.
Well, they have to knock the holes in all at the same time.
Well, yes.
Otherwise, how does it work?
Well, I don't think it's a very sophisticated device, and then it pours down on your head.
All right.
And that's how you have a shower.
They've also got a Shangri-La hotel.
Yeah.
Right. They've also got 2 Ramadas, actually.
Yeah.
A hotel called the J Hotel, HS Khan Resort Hotel.
Do you know what you could do if you're on your camel? You could sing I've been through the desert on a camel with no name.
Yeah, good.
The camels haven't got any names.
Me, ladies and gentlemen, I was under the wrong impression when we started the show. I thought Porky was actually feeling slightly under the weather and subdued. In fact, he's just as mad as ever. This is Talk Sport.
The Two Mics, simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio.
I'm going slightly mad. I'm going slightly mad. It finally happened.
This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mics. Coming up a little bit later on in the hour, Mark Donaldson's going to join us. It's Porkyvision night tonight as well, and we did agree, I think, I'm right in saying, that the Porky quiz this week is on the football management career of Harry Redknapp.
What do you mean you think? I mean, we made a big issue of that. We said Harry's been appointed. I've followed his career throughout the last sort of 30 years.
Yes.
And we should do it on his managerial career.
Okay.
What's wrong with you?
Well, because I can't remember whether we did it on the air or not, that's all.
Oh, blimey. I mean, your memory's fading a bit.
My memory is fading,
I've got problems with retention
my memory is fading.
of facts.
My memory is definitely fading. My memory is definitely not as good as it used to be.
You've remembered that we're going to West Ham on Saturday?
I have remembered that, yes.
Yeah.
The warm-up is coming live from the London Stadium.
It is.
And I'm looking forward to going there for the first time. I'm told security's quite difficult, so we might have to get there a bit earlier than expected.
Well, that's all right.
But the game with Everton, of course, will take place later in the afternoon.
Have you worked out how to get there yet?
I think I know how to get there. I'm going to go on the tube.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good. Yeah. Which station do you get off at?
Stratford, I believe.
Stratford, okay. Well, you can go overland to Stratford as well.
Well, you can, but I mean, for me, because I'm on the Jubilee line, the easiest way to get there is to go to...
And then how far do you have to walk?
Well, I believe you just have to walk towards the Olympic Park, which is not very far.
Right, okay, if you say so.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get specific instructions for you, obviously, before we leave.
Yes, good.
But as far as I'm aware, that is how you get there.
Okay.
If anybody else has got any advice for us, you can please let us know.
Yes.
Irradiated Cola says this, so apart from the banks, railways, cars, airport, power station, etc., Ulaanbaatar is untouched by technology.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And Gio O'Hara sent that similar picture that I showed you earlier and said the chat-up line that you're talking about of going to your kind of, your single
all I
occupancy
can see there are very ugly council blocks of flats, the sort of thing that you see all the time in
looks a bit
Moscow.
like Sheffield, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks a bit like Sheffield. It does.
But I'll tell you what,
yeah.
but you wouldn't say it's not built up, though.
Well, it's a little bit in the foothills there. Listen, I'll tell you what I think is a great story.
Yeah.
Serena Williams has announced that she's having a child.
Yes, indeed. 20 weeks pregnant,
I think that is incredible.
Well, they've used it on the back page of one of the newspapers.
Yeah.
You might not be surprised to know, is the Daily Mail, in which they're basically saying that that's it for her, a game, set and match. Pregnancy could spell the end of her career. Now, I don't know why they would say that.
Well, yeah, why would you say that?
Why would they say that pregnancy will spell the end of her career? Why can't she have a baby and come back?
What I think is absolutely amazing is that she's one of the most successful female athletes of all time, and she's now going to start a family, which I think is brilliant for the for the lady. I really do. I think
absolutely right.
Absolutely fantastic.
But I mean, why on earth? I mean, this is typical of a paper like the Mail, you'd have to say, to make out that this somehow means that it's going to spell the end of her career. She's 35 years old, right? There's nothing to say that she couldn't come back and play. She might not have such a gruelling schedule. She might not play in every single tournament. But she'd certainly still be able to play in some tournaments.
Well, she might choose to end her career by starting a family. Who knows? She might have planned the whole thing herself. But other women, notably, I think, who's the great marathon runner? She didn't she have 2 children, the great marathon runner?
Are you thinking of Zola Budd?
No, in this country. The one I was pictured
Paula
with.
Radcliffe.
Paula Radcliffe, that's right. Yeah, Paula Radcliffe.
She's had children and continued
with her career.
Yeah.
And so did... didn't Jessica Ennis Hill? Has she had...
Jessica Ennis, I think she certainly had a child now. I don't know whether she had before the Olympics actually happened. I couldn't tell you.
Anyway, I think it's great because so often athletes of, both male and female athletes are sometimes billed as being so, focused and dedicated on their athletics and sporting careers, they don't have time for other things in life. So I think that's great.
I think it is great, yeah. Here's one from the Terminators. About what time tonight can we expect Porky to start reading from his journals and get louder and start shouting like a madman?
No.
Hashtag salt.
No, I don't do that. Keep you informed of things that are going on. Don't worry about that.
Anthony says, why does Porky need to go to the barren wastelands of Ulaanbaatar when he could go to simply Everton's trophy cabinet instead? That's quite good, isn't it?
Sorry, what's that?
He said, why does he need to go to the barren wastelands of Ulaanbaatar when he could go to Everton's trophy cabinet instead?
You think that's funny,
He's suggesting that they're a barren wasteland.
Really?
Yeah. Because you haven't had any trophies for a while, have you?
Okay, and the club that you support, how is their...
I don't support a club.
How's their trophy room
looking? I don't
looking?
support any particular club.
Well, if you don't support one, why don't you shut your fat mouth and,
I don't know, I get so upset.
and stop trying to be insulting.
I'm just reading out the tweets.
And,
I'm reading out the tweets.
Derisive to those who have... committed themselves to supporting a club for the whole of their lives, something you wouldn't know about, because your commitment lasts about 5 minutes to everything, including your first family. You're abandoned and sent to America.
Absolute rubbish.
Including homes that you sometimes buy and then abandon
when you can't afford the mortgage. No, it was you
because you can't construct your life properly.
It was actually you that abandoned my home. It wasn't me. I would still have that home if you had actually kept to your word.
It was a slum.
Keep to your word. It was not a slum. It was a $1 million apartment.
Oh, did you have rats in the back garden?
There were some rats in the back garden. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, and that's not a slum.
No. Do you know where the nearest rats are to anywhere that you live? I can tell you they live in the basement of every building in this country.
You don't see them.
Yeah, you don't necessarily see them.
I saw them in the back garden of your place.
Yeah, the reason they were there was because basically they had started excavating the house at the end of the block and knocking it down. Yeah. And so all these rats suddenly started running around. But that's not to say that the place is not worth money, because it's now worth about $1.5 million. Here's one from Woodenhead. Are you sure the travel agent isn't wanting Parry to go in the middle of nowhere to get rid of him?
That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
And Anthony says...
it would be quite fascinating, because remember...
I think we should go to these places because I think, it's nice to go to places like Mallorca and you go to America for holidays, and it's nice to see Long Beach and all that kind of thing. But it's also kind of cool to go to these places as well.
Well, remember I showed you a picture of the Atacama Desert in Chile?
No, that must have been a great place to go.
Well, despite the fact that I've been telling you for years, look, it was fascinating and you'd been derisive of it once again.
What?
Of the Atacama Desert.
I was not derisive.
And when I showed it you, I said it really was the nearest thing I've ever been to that resembles the moon.
Yeah.
And you looked at it and you were gasping with admiration.
Well, I must say, I think they've used it as looking more like Mars. No, I've never.
No, it looked like the moon.
I've never been derisory about your trips to places that are interesting. I've only ever been derisory about your trips to places that are not interesting.
Yes, right. Now then, there's something I meant to tell you, and I'm going to tell you now.
Okay.
I was told today by a friend of mine who comes from the north of England that Manchester City may not sell the whole allocation of semi-final tickets against Arsenal at Wembley on Sunday.
Really?
Now,
I find that astonishing.
Well, it is astonishing, but it's a sign of the times. It is a sign of the times.
Do you mean because of the austerity that people are feeling?
Well, a little bit of the austerity, but another thing is that, I mean, I can remember the fascination of going to a neutral ground for a semi-final. And if it was Manchester City playing Arsenal, as it is this season, that would have definitely been played at Villa Park, because Villa Park was always the halfway house for a North versus South battle. And somewhere like Hillsborough was always the sort of...
it was where the two northern teams would play.
Two northern teams, or maybe a team from the Midlands and Newcastle or something like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fascination of going into a neutral ground and thinking we're not playing Sheffield Wednesday or we're not playing Aston Villa was brilliant. So I can quite understand why... You know, how many tickets do they get? I think 33,000.
Yeah.
I can't quite understand why 33,000 Manchester City fans
aren't going.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge commitment, you know, to go down to London for the weekend.
And is it a Sunday as well?
It's on a Sunday, so you've got to get back for Monday.
And on a Sunday, of course, you have the added problem of the transport problems, don't you? Because quite often, even if there's no strikes or if there's trains running late enough, the trains are on a Sunday service.
Yeah.
You know, they're difficult, they're tricky.
Yeah.
Part of the journey might have to be made by bus. I mean, it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff, so it's not like, 5 o'clock or something like that. But nevertheless, 3 o'clock means the game finishes at 5, you get back to Euston 6:30, something like that. The train north is 3 hours. It's a hell of a long day.
It is.
But it's also very expensive at this time of the year when...
How much are the tickets, does it say? I mean, they're probably 30, 40 quid, are they?
I would say between 30 and 40, something like that, yeah.
And have they got some kind of weird rule, the FA, where you can only buy tickets through Manchester City, if you bought them before or something?
That's down to the clubs.
Yeah.
Because if the clubs have got, say, more than 33,000 season ticket holders, you would probably have to produce vouchers from away games to prove that you were a travelling fan as well, or something like that. You know what I mean? And then,
for example, I mean, I couldn't go up there and decide I want to buy some tickets and go and see Manchester City play.
Well, that will depend really on whether they've sold all their tickets. If they've still got spare tickets, they could sell them, but I don't think they can sell them to anybody who can't prove they're a Manchester City fan, because then you're opening up the opportunity for ne'er-do-gooders.
Yes.
Or touts, certainly, although I don't know why touts would buy tickets that they can't sell to the fans.
Yeah, but touts always get tickets. I mean, any game you go to...
Oh, of course they do.
When we went to Wembley for the League Cup final, there were touts standing outside the tube station selling tickets.
That's right.
Nobody was arrested.
Now, the point I was going to put you is this. If it falls short of the 33,000, supposing they sell 26,000, then in my view... Those spare 7,000 tickets should be passed back to Spurs, because Spurs will undoubtedly be able to sell more than 33,000, being half an hour from Wembley Stadium.
Why would Spurs fans want to go?
Sorry? What am I talking about? Sorry, Arsenal. I beg your pardon. Okay. Arsenal have 60,000 season ticket holders, right?
Yes.
So that, they have 60,000 capacity, and I think about 52,000 of those are season ticket holders.
Yeah.
Now, they've been allocated the same 33.
Yes.
If Manchester City can't sell 7,000 tickets, should they be passed to Arsenal?
Well,
and Arsenal fans allowed to buy them? I think they should.
Well, I would say that sounds sensible. However, it might be that there's reasons why they can't do that. It might be that they've separated out areas of the ground and they can't now sell those 7,000 tickets inside one area if they're to be sat in the middle of where the Manchester City fans are.
But if they've retained them block by block and they've got a block of 4,000 tickets, of course they should.
No.
Well, maybe not, but they should go back to Arsenal because what's the point of having empty seats at Wembley when... I think there'd be up to 20,000 Arsenal fans who would want to go to the game who can't get tickets for it.
No, it would make perfect sense. But again, I mean, I don't disagree with the club's policies on all of these things, because they have to have policies to stop there being incidents, because unfortunately some fans don't know how to behave themselves. And if only they did, then all of these problems would be done away with, wouldn't they?
Actually, I've got a very interesting season ticket story to tell you.
Okay, well, hold on to it.
I'm going to.
We haven't got time for the
moment.
moment.
I'm going to, don't worry.
Thank you very much indeed.
I like a bit of suspense.
Okay, Scottish Bull says when Porky's out in Mongolia, he should go and watch FC Ooh-lon.
Yeah, good idea.
So you never know how good they are.
That's right, yes.
This is Talk Sport.
It's oh so quiet.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. I've got some very, very good tweets here I'd like to read out to you. One very helpful one, actually, from Dave about West Ham. He says, Stratford is 10 to 15 minutes walk. Pudding Mill Lane, if open, is 5 minutes from the entrance, and you will lead on Saturday.
Oh, great.
So Pudding Mill Lane.
Pudding Mill Lane we'll head for, then.
That's not a tube station, though.
No, it's not. Is that from Stratford? What's this record, by the way?
I don't know. It sounds like... I don't know what it is, actually.
I don't know why we're playing it, do you?
No. So quiet.
So quiet.
It's a bit of sort of jazz, isn't it?
With jazz, yeah, okay. Well, you know.
Oh, I'm told it's Bjork.
Bjork?
Not Bjork, no, Bjork.
Bjork, the female singer.
The Icelandic singer.
Yes, but why are we playing it? That's
I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, well, we need to find out because it's a mystery.
Here's one from Freddie. I think Porky literally smashed the record for use of a single word in one section, the most anyone has done for Ulaanbaatar tourism.
I think you're right.
And Mark says, a question, what animal gallops slowly? Answer, a camel with Porky on its back.
Hey, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Somebody's actually done a picture as well.
Yeah, have they really?
Of you on the back of a camel. But it's obviously not you.
It's obviously
have
not
you ever
me,
been on the back of a camel?
No, I haven't.
You ever been on the back of a horse?
No.
I've been on a horse, but never a camel.
I don't think I've ever seen a camel, actually.
What?
I don't think I've ever seen a
not
camel.
even in Chester Zoo?
No, I don't think so.
You must have done.
Well, I've been to Chester Zoo for about, 50 years.
Yeah, but as a kid, they used to... the first
camel
camel I saw was in London Zoo.
Oh, I suppose so, yeah.
But I've seen camels in Kuwait.
I've seen camels in Australia, in Western Australia.
So you have seen them, then?
Well, I've seen them at distance. I've never seen a camel, sort of close up.
In the wild?
I mean, yeah. Not that I'd want to either. They look like pretty filthy and disgusting creatures to me.
They spit, apparently.
Yeah,
Mark
exactly.
says this, Mongolia, where they boil water in a bucket and pour it over you. What's not to like?
That's absolutely right. Let's all go there.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I was quite shocked when you showed me a picture of what looked like a reasonably modern city, and you told me it was Ulaanbaatar.
Here's another one. Look, that's another picture of it. That's like a new skyscraper.
I thought Ulaanbaatar was inhabited by nomads.
Yeah, well,
nomads don't live in skyscrapers.
I think the nomads have moved on.
Yeah, maybe they
to be
have.
honest.
Yeah, I think
as
you
is
could be
their
right.
wont. Now, what's the story you're going to tell me about season tickets?
Well, here, let me tell you this, right? Now, I have a season ticket at Goodison Park. It's part of my commitment to the club. I don't get there as often as I'd like to, but nevertheless, I feel that it's, it brands me as an Evertonian, and so I'm very happy and proud to carry it around my wallet all the time. Because you carry your season ticket around now as a bit of plastic in your wallet. I've still got the season tickets I had 30 years ago, which were books of vouchers.
And the things that you would tear out.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But anyway, I can't remember the last time first of all, I was sent do you want to, renew your season ticket type forms, okay? In a very, very nice sort of executive pack and all that kind of stuff. Followed within 48 hours with, dear Mr. Parry, there is a 6,000 strong waiting list for tickets at Goodison Park.
Is that right?
Which is astonishing.
6,000?
Over 6,000.
Yeah. Is that because it's not... I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's because it's one of the smaller stadiums.
Well, I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that there are now plans for a bigger stadium, and I think a lot of people think, let's get in while we can. You see what I mean? If there are still season tickets available at Goodison, it'd be nice to have one when the switchover comes to the new stadium and that kind of stuff. But, I mean, really putting the pressure on to say, look, if you don't want your ticket, let us know as soon as you can. There are lots of people who do. And I tried to change lounges because I wanted to make it easier to get in and out of the ground, to be honest, because sometimes I have to go and come back very quickly, get a late train back on the same day and that sort of stuff. And wanted, one that was more kind of just accessible, really. And they said, it's impossible. Everybody's renewed in all the other lounges, and we can't swap anybody around. So I either renew the one I've got or I give it up. And I'm not going to give it up, obviously.
Well, no, I suppose you would. But also a lot of people, I suppose, as you say, knowing that the new stadium will soon be causing more people to apply.
Hope so.
I suppose if you're already on a waiting list, then you're already ahead of the game.
I think you're right. I think
that would be the way to do it.
I think you're right. But I do have to say, I take my hat off to all football fans. I mean, the people who fill Arsenal, the Emirates, which we've just been talking about in relation to the Cup semi-final, 60,000 of them. They renew every year. Yeah. And it's a very expensive business following football these days.
Yeah, it certainly is. And do you think, though, this year, if Arsene Wenger says that he's going to stay on, that might change, that some people might not renew?
How can you tell? How can you tell? You can't predict that. When we saw our friend John Sims at Spurs last, or I think you couldn't make it.
I wasn't there. I was in America,
I think John told me that. I mean, there's an astonishing waiting list at Spurs for season tickets. It's like it's in the multiple thousands.
Yeah.
It's over 10,000.
Yeah.
I think he said like 16,000, 17,000, something like that.
Right.
And again,
they'll all be accommodated at Wembley and or in the new stadium, depending on where they're going to play.
Well, I would think so. Yeah, but once again, I know that London is supposed to be a more prosperous area of the country than, say, Merseyside or the North East, but nevertheless, it's still astonishing to me that people can find the money week in, week out to go on these very expensive days out to watch their football team.
Well, it's a question of priorities, I suppose,
It's a question of priorities, but it's a sign of the commitment people in this country have to football. It really
Indeed.
is.
Now, David is listening, would you believe,
Yes.
on a train from Zhangzhou to Shenzhen.
Yes.
And he says it's worth stopping in China on your Mongolian trip, and that's his view out the window. Because he's now on the Chinese railway system.
Well, that doesn't look terribly impressive, does it? It looks like a bit of a run-down Chinese city.
Well, yeah, but you know what? That could be the back end of any... for example, last night there was a big fire on the track outside of Euston Station.
Was there?
And nobody could go on a train from Euston Station anywhere north.
No.
And I don't think it's going to be fixed until today.
You're joking.
So that is going to be an absolute mayhem nightmare scenario. But you could be coming into Euston there. You could be coming into Paddington.
Yeah, you could be. Yeah,
I mean, that's
agree,
what it looks like around the back of a railway station.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So I don't think you should slag off poor old David's view.
Oh, I'm not slagging off David's view, but isn't it amazing he can listen to us on a train? Can you listen to us on a train in this country?
Well, in certain areas, I suppose, if you've got either a podcast or if you've got...
Well, no, I'm talking about live.
If you've got the app, probably.
So there must be Wi-Fi on the train.
There might be Wi-Fi on the train.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're pretty advanced, the Chinese, with their communications, aren't they?
They certainly are.
And they know how to do those sort of things.
Yes.
So that's not something
now,
I would worry about.
there's a guy called Matthew.
Who's sounds good.
Running the risk of causing problems, right? He said, it's my 21st birthday today. Is there any chance of a birthday shout-out?
What's his name?
His name is Matthew.
And how old is he?
He's 21.
21,
Now,
Matthew.
he sent this in about 23 minutes ago, right?
Right.
And then about 10 minutes ago, he sent in, where's my birthday message? So I don't know whether he's getting a bit cheeky. What do you think?
Yeah, he's getting a bit cheeky.
So we didn't manage to do it in the first half an hour for you, Matthew.
Oh, really sorry about that, Matthew. At 21 years of age, my boy, you want to, review your manners to your elders, especially when they're distinguished people like me and MG.
I won't get too carried away about that.
However, I'd like to wish you a very happy 21st birthday. I hope you have a long and fruitful life, and if your life is half as successful as mine, then you'll have had a good run.
You'll be half as successful as Porky.
What?
Which is one way of looking at it. Now, do you remember we were talking about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon towards the end of the show last night?
On the rivers of Babylon.
Well, this was about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon because you told me that somebody's going to build or recreate
Yes, they are.
the Hanging Gardens of Babylon somewhere in London, right?
No, it's...
Birmingham, sorry.
In Birmingham, that's
in Birmingham,
right.
right. Well, bizarrely, right, as I was on the way home yesterday, in fact, just when I got home, somebody, I think it was David, had tweeted me the fact that they think they've now found the real site of the original Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
I thought Babylon existed, you see. When I heard that Boney M song, On the Rivers of Babylon,
right.
I thought Babylon must be some sort of town somewhere in, like, Mesopotamia
Well, yeah,
or
it was
Iraq
like
or
I think
something
it was like an
that,
ancient city.
Yeah, yeah.
But because it's now in rack and ruin, get it? Iraq and ruin.
I like it, Iraq and ruin, yeah, it's good.
They don't know precisely where it was, right?
Right.
But they think now...
So it's a bit like Atlantis, then. It's a sort of land-based version of Atlantis.
Yeah. Well, like, do you remember I mentioned the Colossus of Rhodes? And I said, nobody really knows where that is. They're not sure. Dr. Stephanie Daly is from Oxford University, right? And she's been looking around an area about a few hundred miles north of the site of where they think the ancient city of Babylon, near a place called Hilla in central Iraq.
Hilla.
Is, in fact, where the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were.
Yes.
And so they think it was near the city of Nineveh.
Nineveh.
In the north of the country.
Right, okay.
So it's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is very cool. And have they managed to put together a graphic of what the Hanging Gardens look like?
Well, they've pieced together clues from ancient texts, okay? And they think that it looked something like that. Which actually looks like a fairly ordinary kind of garden structure with some...
Looks like something out of India, that.
Well, it looks to me like something out of...
They've got all these palaces in India where they've got gardens on every level.
Highgate Cemetery.
Absolutely,
I mean, where there are some structures, there's some pillars, there's some... I mean, it looks very nice, but it doesn't look particularly, incredible.
Yeah, no.
Which I think is what it's meant to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you something interesting, actually.
Why isn't this interesting?
Sorry? That is very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Well, is that it then? That's all you want to hear about it?
No,
There's a lot more I can tell you.
Well, I don't...
The footage is of a film. They made a film, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right?
So we're going to talk a bit more.
You couldn't care less, could you?
No, sorry, we're talking a bit more about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Okay, I'm sure everybody's riveted and fascinated
this
by
woman from Oxford University... Well, you're the one that brought it up yesterday. You thought it was interesting yesterday when you brought it up.
Oh, yeah, but that's because they were going to recreate them in Birmingham.
But the fact that this is
now...
that
they don't exist anywhere else in the world,
that they've now found where they think they actually were.
Might as well be talking about, the Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, you know what I mean?
You've read that, have you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
How does it end?
They all get lost, don't they?
Now, listen, they've made a film of this discovery, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this woman from Oxford University...
Sorry, I didn't think they had discovered anything.
Well, she's discovered where she believes the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were.
But she hasn't discovered the gardens.
Well, no, because they're all in ruins, obviously.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So she hasn't really discovered anything then, except
well,
some
listen.
old junky rocks or something.
She says this: my conviction that the gardens were in Nineveh remains unshaken.
Oh, right.
So she's sure.
So
and
if
she
she
spent
thinks
more than 20 years. She spent 20 years looking for this stuff, right? And she's now found it, and she believes that this is a brilliant discovery.
All right, she thinks they're in Nineveh, right?
Yeah.
So she goes to Nineveh. She has a look.
Yeah.
There are no gardens of Babylon.
No.
But she still thinks they were in Nineveh.
Yeah.
But they're not in Nineveh because they're not there.
Well, some people think they didn't ever exist.
Well, that's what I mean. So
Well,
she's,
that's why.
I'm convinced they're in Nineveh.
Yeah.
Well, look, go to Nineveh and have a look.
Well, I mean,
Did you find them? No.
It's a bit like you claiming that Ulaanbaatar is a complete and utter wasteland, when in fact it is a modern metropolitan city where more than 1.3 million people live,
But it
which
used to
has
be.
skyscrapers, trains, Wi-Fi,
Used to be a
hotels.
wasteland.
Well, yeah, your brain used to be a wasteland until it got educated.
Yeah, but hang on.
Thanks to the King's School Chester,
Hang on.
you're now very intelligent.
Hang on. There's evidence that Ulaanbaatar used to be a
at the time.
wasteland. There is no evidence whatsoever that in Nineveh there used to be the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Incorrect.
So this woman is off her rocker.
All right, so next time you bum up a big Oxford University name and say, oh, they've been to Oxford, they must be smart, I'll remind you of that.
Yeah, she's from the Unsmart.
The Unsmart? Okay. I didn't know that was a shop.
No, she's from the Unsmart.
The Unsmart.
She's not making sense, put it that way.
No, neither are you. This is Talk Sport.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Loads more coming up. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about how the Russians apparently are working on a special Terminator-type robot, which is going to have the ability to fire weapons. Now, is this the beginning of what is a real science fiction nightmare for all the rest of us? It's sending this thing up into space. So, I mean, it is a bit like the plot of those Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. But before we do any of that, let's talk about Barcelona and the Champions League. Mark Donaldson from ESPN is here. Mark, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you both?
Very
Mark,
well.
in great shape, mate.
Very well indeed.
Great to have you on the show again. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
Brings a bit
All right,
of
calm
professionalism
down.
to
we
the
haven't
whole
got a lot of
thing.
time for this, We want to make sure that we get most out of Mark that we can. Now, Mark, the big question is, how is it possible that Neymar, Suarez and Messi fail completely to score goals in 180 minutes of football against Juventus?
It's the brilliance of the Juventus defence.
Correct. Bottom line, the brilliance of defending from the front. Higuain all the way back to even Barzali when he came on. Chiellini, Bonucci. Can you tell me a better world centre-back partnership right now than Chiellini and Bonucci? I don't think there is one. One's 29, one's 32.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Messi looked as ordinary as Messi looks. Messi's world class. For me, he's best in the world, then Ronaldo. But, I mean, he had chances, don't get me wrong. If he was sharper, he would have scored. But I just don't know. And the problem is, if you can get by the back two, you've then got Buffon, who's 39, and he's playing fantastic form. I'm with you, Porky. The defence is I don't. If you can tell me a better one, better centre-back partnership, then I'll doff my cap, because I can't think of one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It'd be impossible to scour the world and find such an efficient unit, which makes you wonder whether anybody's going to be able to beat them, because the statistics are incredible. They haven't conceded a goal in the Champions League, have they?
2, I think.
No, I mean in real play, apart from free kicks and penalties.
Oh, yeah, well, they've only 2 goals, I think, in the whole tournament.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Isn't that right, Mark?
It's scary.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they conceded at Sevilla. Parry got the opener against Sevilla, and I think it was the game before that they drew against Lyon when Tolisso scored late. Those were the only goals. And for me, it brings up the kind of, when the draw is made on Friday, we've got Juve, who don't concede many, Monaco, who score for fun, Atleti, who don't concede many, and Real Madrid, who score for fun. So what do you want as your semi-final draw? Do you want attack against defence, or do you want attack against attack and defence against defence, which would guarantee you attack against defence in the final? What do you want?
I think I'd like to see a final between Real Madrid and Juventus, and I'd quite like to see Juventus winning it.
I think it'll be a Real Madrid-Juventus final, but Real Madrid will win it because of Ronaldo.
I'd love to see Monaco-Juve. I mean, I was at Old Trafford 2003 when AC Milan played Juventus, and I just think the style that they've got, I love Dybala, I think he's magnificent, I love Mbappe, and I love the fact that there's a kind of renaissance in Falcao, a bit like Torres, but not to the same extent. I think Falcao's renaissance, and this is what I don't get as well. When he was at Man United, is he in a place that he just loves being in now? Is he playing with players that he loves playing with? Mbappe, a young kid who does a lot of running for him. Is that why he's playing the way he's playing right now?
Well, you have to wonder, don't you, whether, I mean, without wishing to be unkind to Manchester, that there is something about the geographical location of where these guys are. I mean, you've got Monaco, you've got Madrid, you've got Barcelona, you've got Munich, and you've got Manchester, I suppose. I guess you're talking about, you know, some of the great cities of football in Europe. And with the best will in the world, so people living in Manchester, you know, Manchester is not the greatest place out of all of those to live.
No, I mean, he's from a place called Santa Marta. It's a small place in Colombia. Obviously, it's a different way of lifestyle, but again...
I think that's a ridiculous prognosis, by the way, that Mike Graham's just put to you.
Why?
Because you don't live in Manchester, you live in Cheshire, you live in Stockbroker Belt, Cheshire, where millionaires and...
So what's the weather difference? Is there a 20-degree weather difference between the stockbroker millionaires in Cheshire and in Manchester?
No,
not at all. But I mean, hang on. Doesn't matter. You know, South American people don't look for Mediterranean weather, do they?
How do you know?
Sorry?
How do you know?
Because I know.
South American people live in a very large continent.
You've never been to South America?
No, I haven't, but I know...
Right, so you don't know what you're talking about again.
Well, I don't have to go somewhere to know what the weather is like. And the weather in Argentina, right, is very, very different from the weather in Brazil.
I am an expert on the geophysical properties of Argentina, Brazil, Chile and Uruguay.
Well, what's the temperature in Argentina right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
What month are we in? June?
No, it's April.
June?
Oh, no, it's April, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It doesn't even know what month it is.
It's about 21 degrees.
Is that a good guess?
No, I know.
By the way, you're not far off.
Thank you.
It's 19 degrees right now in Buenos Aires.
There you go. Thank you very much indeed.
My point is that, you know, different people from different countries in South America are expecting different types of weather.
Are they?
You know, because Brazilians are not always expecting it to be hot, depending on which part of Brazil they're from.
Yeah.
And Argentinians are not always expecting it to be freezing cold.
Yeah, Brazil.
All I'm saying is, Mark, and I'm trying to get Mark to answer this rather than you, if you don't mind. You know,
all right,
what is the view, do you think, in Europe of playing? I mean, obviously playing the Premier League is one thing, but playing not in London or playing in a place which might be regarded as slightly less glamorous is what I'm saying.
Do you know what? If you ask anybody, right, if you're going to get, I don't know, 300,000 a week, and you get the choice of staying in Manchester or in Monaco, you get the choice of staying in England or the south of France, you're going to go to the south of France if it's purely based on the kind of lifestyle that you want. You have an outdoorsy lifestyle. Bearing in mind the best time of year in England is probably from May through to about October.
Yeah.
You get that weather all year round in Europe. So, I mean, it depends what you're after. I think you see with Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Newcastle and the managers they've had in the past when they've said, you know what, even if we've got a really good team, we can struggle to attract players up to the northeast because it's a bit like living in Perth, Australia. You're miles from kind of the main part of that country. You're miles from London. I mean, that is the geographical issue, I think, is something that players think about. And, I mean, we've seen the Thierry Henry comments over the last few days about Arsenal not being as enticing a place to come to now. I think a lot of that is to do with they don't get in the Champions League. Part of it's to do with Wenger as well. But if you give me the choice between Newcastle, if they were in the Champions League, or Arsenal, if they're in the Champions League, I'd take Arsenal because I'd rather stay in Liverpool. I love Newcastle. I'd rather stay in London than in Newcastle. And I love Newcastle. But there's far more to do in a place like London. It's all dependent. It's all individualistic in what you want from your life. But give me Monaco over Manchester any day.
And also looking at the makeup of what will be the semi-finals, the draws on Sunday, obviously. When you get the old
Friday.
On Friday, sorry. When you get the old Little Englander people coming and say, yeah, but you get a chance to play the Premier League and Manchester United, one of the top clubs in the world. You know, Monaco are in the semi-finals of the Champions League, so you can't really make that argument. Juventus are in the semi-finals of the Champions League. Both Madrid teams are in it. You know, if you're a player that wants to be in and win the Champions League, you've got to be in one of those teams.
Correct. And that's the bottom line. I mean, Monaco right now, they're involved in a decent title race in Ligue 1.
Yeah.
Is it the best league in Europe? No, it's not. But, I mean, you've got 4 points separating the top three. You've got the top two on the same points, albeit Monaco have played a game less. But that's an interesting comment you made about the Little Englander. I mean, I'd go the Little Britain type aspect as well.
Not for much longer, though.
No, well, you know what it's like. It's a kind of it's a lack of education as to what else is out there.
Sure.
I'll put my hand up. I mean, I knew what I know what I need to know when it comes to what I do, and it was the same when I was in Scotland. I knew as much as I could about Scottish football and about English football. Did I know enough about German football, Dutch football, Spanish football, the leagues I was going to cover? No, I didn't. So I had to learn them. And I love covering some of the leagues, like the Dutch league in the title race right now. But my knowledge of that was poor. Can your listeners, the knowledge of the French league, I know it's on TV there, but how many people actually watch it? It's a decent league to watch. And granted, the title race this season is good. It isn't always like that. Paris Saint-Germain have run away with it in years gone by. But I do think it's a lack of education as to, well, if we don't watch it, then it doesn't exist. And Monaco, how many of your listeners could name, say, 4 or 5 Monaco players before they went on this run?
It's
an interesting statistic.
No, it's absolutely right.
Well, that's why everyone said, who's this bloke Marco Silva that's coming in to run Hull? You know, and he's now being called the Premier League manager of the season, very possibly, if he keeps him up.
Yeah, but everybody loves a team that emerges from nowhere and then runs riot like Monaco, scores more goals than any other team in the world, and basically it's a breath of fresh air, you know, against the stale and unexciting drudgery of the early part of this competition.
And they've got up against Paris Saint-Germain, who spent fortunes. I mean, it's a bit like Leicester last season, playing against the likes of Chelsea and Manchester City and beating them. I love a feel-good story. Now, granted, it's tax-free and there's various other implications if you go there that is beneficial as well. And you can say, but they've got millions and millions to spend and they've got royalty that supports them as well. But do you not think we get bored of the same old, whether it's in England, Scotland, or in European football? I love a bit of change from time to time. I loved Leicester winning last year, and I'd love someone like Monaco or Juve winning the Champions League this year.
Absolutely right. Now, before we let you go, Mark, because we haven't had a chance to talk about the rugby yet on the show, obviously the Lions tour announcement was made yesterday. The squad was picked. How do you feel about the Scotland scenario where only 2 players have made the cut?
Do you know what? It's the least number that's ever made it, joint least number, and there's no forwards for the first time, no Scottish forwards for the first time since 1908, I think it is. But I want to direct you to the BBC Scotland website and an article by a guy who I know called Tom English, who's a rugby writer.
Oh, I know
and
Tom.
He's saying, yeah, exactly. And he's going through it from a Scottish perspective, and he's Irish, and he's going through it, and he says, can we really argue about who is not being put in from Scotland? He said, there's English guys that are not in there that will feel hard done by. Okay, there's Welsh guys as well who are in, and there's others that aren't. But I would have liked to have seen a few more. I think ultimately, no matter how many Scots were involved, I think only one will start in New Zealand. And I think that's Stuart Hogg, who deserves to start at fullback.
Hoggy, I agree.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Mark, thank you very much indeed. We've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Mark Donaldson from ESPN, this is TalkSport. Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the Two Mikes on Talk Sport. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be going over to Houston in Texas to catch up with Eric Berger, who's the senior space editor for Technica, discussing Russia's Fedor androids. These are things which they've been developing over the course of the last couple of years, and basically they are the original Terminator-type robots which are going to be fighting in space on behalf of the Russians. If you think that's crazy science fiction talk, just wait until you hear what they're doing. 08717 22 3344. Also coming up later on, it's Porkyvision night as well. The best TV review this side of Ooh-lon. We might take some more calls and read some more tweets out on that as well. You're listening to the Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. Now, we should read out quite a few tweets that we've had to catch up on. Here's one from the Scouser, who says, TalkSport and the Two Mikes. Mike Parry, when you go to Mongolia, would you bring me back 200 fags? Camels, of course.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, Andy says, Kim Clijsters had a baby in 2008 and then won the US Open Singles Championship in 2009 and 2010.
Well done.
So
Brilliant.
it can be done.
Of course it can,
It's not us that's saying you can't do it, of course.
No.
Here's one from Gooners, who says, 65,000 on the waiting list at Arsenal. Yeah. Owen says, I'm 37,000th on the Spurs season ticket waiting list. I was 47,000th when I joined 3 years ago, and it's now well over 50k.
Who's this with?
This is with Spurs.
37,000.
His position on the waiting list is 37,000.
Goodness gracious!
Right.
That's
Dan
amazing.
says,
Yeah.
I'm in a queuing system for a Spurs season ticket. I'm number
Yep.
60,646.
Yes.
So
yes.
he's nearly 61,000 back.
That's incredible.
Isn't that incredible?
Those figures are astonishing, aren't
Yeah.
they? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Ben says, I'm listening live in a cab in Singapore, so I'm also on the move. So I guess you can.
So he must have Wi-Fi in the cab then.
Well, you can use data. I mean, you can use 3G.
3G.
You know, when you're out and about,
Yeah.
and you don't, and you need to use Twitter.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You don't
Yeah,
use
yeah.
Wi-Fi. You use 3G, don't you, or 4G?
Yeah, I suppose you do. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but sometimes in a big place like Hong Kong, it all gets like compressed.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the signal.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
I know what I'm talking
No,
about.
you don't. You don't want to go down the technological road.
No, listen.
Tell me about how 3G gets compressed.
Let me just tell you about something else, right?
I wanna hear this one.
Am I right in thinking
Yeah.
that your lovely daughter Emma,
Yes.
this week interviewed the world's richest man?
She did. Well, she didn't actually interview
She
him.
was part of the team.
involved in the
interviewing him,
production
yes, the
unit
production
that was
team.
doing
Yeah,
it, yes.
Yeah. So now, and I look at one of tomorrow morning's newspapers, just happened to be the Guardian.
Yeah.
Bill Gates warned Theresa May yesterday, and Bill Gates we accept as the richest man in the world.
He
yeah.
is listed as such.
Yeah, that if the Conservatives abandon the UK's overseas aid spending pledge, the country's influence in the world will be reduced and more lives will be lost in Africa.
Yeah.
Now, this is because Mrs. May has been asked, are you also going for an election so that you can wipe away some of David Cameron's former policies?
Yeah.
And one of them was that 0.7% of gross national product
right.
will always go to overseas aid.
Yes.
Now,
And this is a bugbear of yours, isn't it?
well, it's a bugbear of mine, but when Mr. Gates has almost got more money than this country's got. In fact, he has got more money than this
He
country's
very probably has, because we're in a lot of debt. actually.
Exactly. If
I
you
mean, as
wake
it was
up...
pointed out by Jeremy Corbyn in Prime Minister's Questions yesterday.
Yes.
You know, the Conservatives keep saying they're going to get rid of debt by such and such a year. And then they get to that year and go, no, we haven't got rid of it yet. We need a bit
No,
more
we've got
time.
more. We've got more
we'll
debt.
get more debt, and we've got longer to get rid of
runs
it.
into trillions. So
Yeah.
by the time you've weighed up what we've got and what we owe, I reckon Bill Gates is richer than us. So may I make the suggestion to Mr. Gates that actually... Could you give Africa a lot more money than
Well,
you
to be
do
honest,
now,
he probably
please?
does.
I'm sure he probably does. I'm sure he probably does.
He's
but if
involved
he thinks,
in a lot of projects in Africa.
if he thinks we should as well, I'd prefer him to, put his hand in his own pocket and give a bit more to
I think I know where you're coming
these
from.
needy people in Africa,
I know-
rather
I
than
know-
telling us
Yeah, all right.
and me, a British taxpayer, that I've got to give more money to
Well,
overseas
I
aid.
know where you're coming from, but I think
Yes.
you would be on a losing wicket, if you'll pardon the analogy, trying to make out that Bill Gates does not give money to
I'm not
decent
making that
causes.
out.
Because he does already. He has a thing called the Bill Gates Foundation.
I know.
Which is what she was involved in interviewing him about.
Yes.
And it's all about billions and billions of pounds
That's
that
right.
he gives to projects in Africa and to whole communities
Yes.
and so on. I mean, he does already give loads of money.
Yes.
And the thing is, he's a bit of a sort of a guy. He has become now more famous, I suppose,
Yes.
for his good works. He's producing this thing called the Impossible Burger. Have you heard of this?
No.
The Impossible Burger is a burger which is being currently manufactured and sold in certain outlets in America, which is designed to look, taste, feel, and even smell like a hamburger.
Yes.
But it's made from plants.
Plants.
It is not made from meat at all.
So,
But it's not a veggie burger, right? It's not meant
right,
to
I
be.
was going to say, are we already there with the veggie
Well,
burger?
no, it's not, because
No.
it's not being marketed as a veggie burger, right?
Right, okay.
It is, if I showed you a picture of it, you would say that looks like meat.
Yes.
Because it does.
Yeah, well, so does that corn stuff.
Well, not really.
Well,
I mean, if you look at corn when
Yeah.
it's being cooked, it
Yeah.
does not really look like
Well,
meat.
I've never seen it cooked. I've seen it
Right.
on the packet, and on the packet, it's
Yeah, well,
it
they
looks
could
like,
do lots
yeah.
of good things with
Yeah.
pictures on packets. My
Sure,
point is that
sure.
he and the guy that started up the company in
Yeah.
California have said basically the amount of ground that is used up by cattle grazing, the amount of basically sort of renewable energy that we're wasting,
Yes.
the amount of fossil fuels that we're wasting by flying all this stuff around,
Yeah.
by people eating all this stuff.
Yeah.
So he's actually actively engaged in saving the world in whichever
Okay.
way he sees fit. Now, you might not agree with him, but he's spending an awful lot of money doing it, right?
Well-
and the Impossible Burger will be on sale in Britain, they think, in sometime in the next year.
Yeah, well, it's very commendable, and I admire the man enormously. I admire anybody who makes such a huge fortune from being highly intelligent and very hard-working. But I just don't think then you should go around telling other people how to manage their economies. And to say that,
Well, it
Bill
probably
Gates
isn't
warns
quite-
Theresa May...
It isn't quite like that, is it?
countries' influence in the world will be reduced, more lives will be lost in Africa.
Yeah.
Actually, what we need to do is we need to control where the aid money goes. And if we did, and we had strict rules and regulations about what it was used for, you could halve the aid bill from this country, but make it more productive and help more people.
That would be good too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very difficult and complicated area, but
Of
I
course
think
it
for
is.
you to be quite as black and white as that, as to say we should stop giving any money to any foreign country.
When did I say that? When did I say
you
that?
say it quite often.
I did not say that. I've just said to you.
It's like cyclists. It's one of your bugbears. You take the Daily Mail view of the world on it, and you say we
I did
shouldn't be
not
giving
take
this
the
money
Daily
away.
Mail view of
You've
the
said
world.
in the past that we should stop giving money to foreign governments because they waste it, and we should spend the money at home. That's what you've said.
I've said already. I've just stated to you a few seconds ago. I said if it was run efficiently.
Yes, no, but you've
then-
never said that before.
Then you
You're saying
could-
that now.
No. You're twisting my words again as usual
No, not
because
at all.
your oafish interpretation
Not
of
at
what
all.
I
Well,
say.
I mean, the
is
listeners
so
know. The
bland.
listeners know what you say. It's okay if you want to change your view on it, but you have said in the past
I don't
that
need
we
to.
should not have an overseas aid budget.
I don't need to. And by the way, my Daily Mail view on cyclists. What's that all about?
I didn't say you Daily
Do you
Mail
like
view on
these
cyclists.
cyclists?
No,
do
I
you,
said no.
going around.
No, I said you take
occupying huge areas
no, I
of
said
road space.
No, I said
except
you take
they don't.
I said you take a Daily Mail view on overseas aid because they're constantly banging on about it.
I have no idea what the Daily Mail's view on overseas
Really?
aid is.
What do you think it is?
Nobody leads me by the nose in anything that I
Is that
believe
right?
in, okay?
Well, what do you think the Daily Mail's view on overseas aid is?
I care not what the Daily Mail's view on
Really?
overseas aid is. I read what the Daily Mail says about it in the same way as I read what the Telegraph and the Guardian and the Times and the Mirror say about it, and then
Okay.
I make my own mind up.
Well,
okay?
as long as you
Put
are not
that
in
in
any
your
way,
pipe.
as long as you're not in any way trapped in the Daily Mail mindset, that'd be fine.
Put that in your pipe,
And I don't
pal.
think you are. But the trouble is
Good.
that I am your conscience in many ways because sometimes
You are
you
not my
forget what
conscience.
arguments you have made, and I'm here to remind you.
Rubbish.
And if I don't remind you, then lots of other people do.
Utter nonsense, honestly. I don't know with the drivel that you come out with sometimes. I think it's affected by the fact that, your social life is, so completely
What's wrong with my social life?
dominated. But, well, didn't you put out some picture of alcohol again today?
Today,
Or was that yesterday?
Oh, that was yesterday.
That was yesterday.
You see, you can't remember what day it is. You don't know what month it is. If I were you, I'd stop giving me advice on my social life.
Well, I mean, most days you put out a picture of some
Incorrect.
form of alcohol
That's
that you're
not right.
consuming and imbibing.
Would you like to have a look at my Twitter and see what I put out today as a picture?
Why would I want to read your Twitter?
Well, you obviously,
You think I've got better things to do.
It's obviously bothering you.
It's not bothering me at all. On this day, by the way, 1981,
Yes.
young Steve Davis won the first of his 6 world snooker titles.
Did he?
When he beat Doug Mountjoy, 18-12, in the final of the Crucible Theatre.
I see.
Now, the following day, right, as I bounded into work...
What, the following day then, you mean?
in 1981, as I
Okay.
bounded into work,
Where were you working in 1981?
I just joined the Daily Express in Fleet Street from Manchester.
Okay.
So I bound into work as usual, my usual, terrific enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And
Only to be told you've got a day off today.
No. And the news editor, John Jenks, said, hey, get around the Hilton in Park Lane and have a look at this kid who's won the World Snooker, that kid with the carrot head, Steve Davis.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
find out what he's all about.
They didn't realise how boring he was at that point, right?
He never was boring, actually. He was pretty...
Well, he became known as Boring Steve Davis, didn't he?
Yeah, but he played on it and actually capitalised on
Yeah.
it and made a feature of it. But anyway, so I got round there and then walked in, and I'd never been in the Hilton before. It's quite a shock, actually.
Was this in the one in Park Lane?
Yeah, Park Lane,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's one of the most famous hotels in the world at the time, wasn't
It is.
So anyway, I go in and I say, oh, yeah, World Snooker reception, please. Oh, yes, sir, on the mezzanine or something like that,
Yeah.
So I go up there and walk in. There's Steve in the corner. And, he looked very young.
Yeah.
He was actually
Well, he was very young,
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
he?
right. Yeah, that's true. And got talking to him, and of course I had ginger hair in those days, and so did he.
Yes.
So I immediately bonded with him, and said, look at this, you're paving the way for,
Was there not anybody else
the
wanting to
gingers.
see him as well?
Oh, there were loads of people,
Yeah.
but I used my elbows to get to the front.
I see.
And, asked all the pertinent questions,
Was it a press conference then?
Well, it was a sort of reception, but
Right.
the press were invited to it, you see
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, then I asked him, I said, by the way, Steve, I said, you've won, I think the cheque in those days was 12,500 or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
I said...
It was probably quite a lot of money in those days.
I'm sure it was quite a lot of money. And I said, so what are you going to do with all your money? He said, I've no idea. And I said, well, you must have some idea. He said, well, you better go and talk to Barry. He'd sort all that out for me.
Right.
And I said, Barry? Who's Barry?
Barry Hearn.
Yeah, he said, Barry over in the corner there. So I went over and saw a chap who wasn't that many years older than Steve, dressed in a pinstripe suit,
Yeah.
silver grey hair, but not greying hair. That
Right.
was his natural colour of his hair. Very confident in the way he talked and spoke about everything. And I just said, are you Barry? He said, yeah, who are you? I said, I'm Mike Parry. First time I've ever met him, known him ever since.
Yeah.
And And I said, well, what are you going to do with Steve's, Steve's winnings? He said, Steve's winnings? He said, we only just started. He said, so there's no point in me telling you what I'm going to do with the winnings from this one. He said, because, what we're going to win in the future is going to so eclipse anything anybody's ever won in this sport. He said, and the sport will grow, and Steve will grow with it and become a mighty champion. And it was brilliant, the way because he transformed
And did it take a long time for everyone to kind of get that through their heads, or when you went back to the office, did they all go, that's a load of old rubbish, they've said that before?
Yeah, they did, yeah, but I said no, I said these guys seem to have a different approach to the whole thing. The thing is, previously, snooker players had always been regarded as blokes who'd come out of, misspent youth. A men's working club afternoon spent, smoke, filtering around the room and all this kind of stuff.
And the Cray brothers coming in and stabbing people through the hand with a sword.
Yes, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
time, by the way.
this young lad from Womford, who had this great sort of manager who was a chartered accountant, transformed the game.
Yes, indeed he did. Now, just one quick tweet here from Westrin. It says, I live here in Hong Kong and its internet connection is one of the fastest in the world, Porky.
Wow.
You plank.
Wow, that's
and he sent a
fantastic.
beautiful picture. Look at that. Look at the colours. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? We may have to go do
That's
a show
the
there.
sky, though, isn't it? That's got nothing to do with Wi-Fi, has it?
Oh, no, that's just a picture of Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's pretty
Well, you
impressive.
can't take a picture of Wi-Fi, can you?
No, you can't, no. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why you connected the two, though.
Well, because you were slagging off Hong Kong for its Wi-Fi.
No, I wasn't.
He's just sent you a picture of Hong Kong and said that it's got the fastest internet connection in the world.
I am very grateful to him, no problem at all.
Thank you very much indeed. This is Talk Sport. It's always a bit frightening that when you hear that, isn't it?
What's that?
That's the Terminator music.
Terminator, yeah.
You must have seen Terminator, right?
I have seen
I'll
Terminator.
be back.
Yes.
The first one, have you seen lots of them?
I've never seen it all the way through.
Have you never?
Is it the one where they run down the empty water channel in LA and he's changing shape all the
big
time?
Storm drains.
Yes, that's right.
That's Terminator 2.
Oh, is it?
That's
Okay,
when
yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger comes back as the good Terminator.
Oh, okay.
To try and save the kid from the bad second generation Terminator.
Yeah, all right.
He
Well,
was able to turn
into all
into
that.
sort of molten metal.
And when are we talking to this
We're talking to a guy by the name of Eric Berger in about 10 minutes.
That's excellent. Good.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
Now, how about this?
Yes,
Before
go on.
we do any more,
Yes.
Michael says this. I've been 8 years on the waiting list at Spurs, and I'm now down to 8,000.
Wow. And that's after 8 years?
Yeah.
God,
Anthony
crikey.
says, I'm around 6,500 on the Liverpool waiting list, which I joined in 2003.
Golly.
I could have done a life term for murder in that time.
Yeah, could have done, yeah.
Graham says about Porkyvision, can you please give plenty of notice when discussing Broadchurch, as we haven't seen the last episode in New Zealand yet.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Don't
I don't
worry.
know if you're thinking of giving that away.
Well, you've got to wait and see, haven't you? That's the whole beauty of Porkyvision. You never know what's coming up next.
Yeah, well, indeed. Well, we've got the siren at the ready, just in
Siren,
case.
good. Now, that music actually has a dual purpose to it. One, it's Terminator, which we'll be talking about shortly. But also, were you aware of the amount of drumming in that?
Well, I certainly
Very
did
heavy
hear quite
drumming.
a bit of drumming. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you know that the latest fad that new companies are building into their new buildings? A lot of new buildings going up in London, by the way, all the time.
I mean, the skyline is incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. And
Considering how expensive it is to do anything here.
It is, yeah. And sometimes when you're walking down a street in London at night, you think we've been invaded by aliens because every crane has to have a red light on the top, and sometimes it looks like a fireworks display.
Right.
But anyway, the point is that one feature now being incorporated in new buildings, architects are designing reset pods, and these are where employees of the company can go in. And what companies are doing is they're putting in these rooms huge drum kits, or a huge number of drum kits.
So presumably they're soundproofing the rooms, right?
They're soundproofing the rooms, and you go in and you pick up drumsticks, even if you've never played the drums before, and you can either stand up and bash drums, or you can sit down, and apparently it's a way of getting all your frustration and tension and fear and
I'm
depression.
sure it is, especially if you do it the way Keith Moon used to do it, where he used to sort of kick the drums over
and smash them all up. But I can't say you get anything out of it unless you're a skilled drummer.
Right.
Because all you're doing is you're like a child banging an upturned bucket, aren't you?
I always fancied learning how to play the drums, but I never did.
No, I know. Well, that's obvious, isn't it?
What do
Because
you mean?
you never stick to anything that you think.
Well, that's not true.
Well,
Well, see, that's the sort of calumny that you come out with.
When you went to university and copped out.
I went to university and decided I wanted to become a journalist. There wasn't any point in staying.
So you went into journalism and then copped out your first couple of jobs.
Not true.
Yeah.
What?
yeah.
How do I cop out of them?
Well, you went to the interview with these ridiculous things like the
No,
cobbler.
I applied for lots of different
the cobbler,
jobs. Yeah.
the grocer,
I
the
applied,
baker.
I applied for lots of different jobs which I didn't get.
Anyway,
why is that so weird?
No. Let's get back to drumming.
Okay.
Employees can smash drums, belt out a favourite song, or practice yoga, and they're being installed in more and more offices to tackle epidemic levels of workplace stress.
Yes.
Now, why are there epidemic levels of workplace stress?
I think I know the answer to that. I'll tell you why I think workplace stress exists. Because there is now no longer any place to go to escape from work. And you see it with people all the time. I mean, you know people, as I do, who work in different jobs, and you meet them from time to time. There is nowhere on earth now, really, possibly with the exception of the Mongolian outback, where you can escape from Wi-Fi, or you can escape from your phone, you can escape from email, or you can escape from a telephone call.
Yeah.
So in the old days, when you and I used to have to go perhaps on the missing list, and I'm not sure if you're going to admit to ever doing that, but certainly before the mobile phone era, you could go missing. And nobody knew where you were, they couldn't get a hold of you, and eventually you rang into the office and you said, "Look, I'm terribly sorry, I've been holed up in a room with somebody trying to get a story out of them."
Yeah.
Now, it might have been that you were holed up in a room with a beautiful blonde, or a beautiful brunette.
Or in a pub.
Or in a pub with a couple of guys.
Exactly.
Bottom line was, nobody knew where you were.
Yes.
Now, you can't do that. And if you do go out for lunch, I mean, you see people in this building here who work in different parts of the business, right?
Yes.
They go out for lunch, but they only go out generally and get a little sandwich and come back.
Yeah.
When they're out, they're still on their phones. They're working on, they're trying to get out. People are constantly on 24/7 now, and I think that's why people are more stressed out.
An old friend of mine who worked on an evening paper in Cardiff, boyo.
Cardiff,
yeah.
He
would
great city.
Yeah, we've got a great nightlife city. Of course, his young man used to go out at night and get absolutely bladderated. Next morning, he'd come in. He'd just about be able to last an hour and, write a couple of stories that were sort of knocking around. And then he'd always go up to the news editor and say, I've got to meet a good contact, down at the docks. I'll be a couple of hours, all right, and I'll have a great story.
Yeah.
He would then go back to the flat that he rented with another bloke, which is only about 300 yards away, and he would have to lie down for another 2 hours to get over the excess drunkenness and bladderation of the night before.
And was he smart enough to then come back with the story as well?
Sometimes, but sometimes it fell through. But, I mean, he was quite a good reporter, so usually he could spot a story either going to his pit or coming back from his pit. It'd be something like, a policeman booking a motorist or something, or let's do a motoring story or something like that, you know what I mean?
Right.
But as you quite rightly say, nobody was ever ringing him or texting him during those 2 hours when he was absent,
and
he was free of contact from his office.
Right.
Now, it says here, right, the pods are part of a trend of employers installing facilities such as sleeping rooms, gyms, chill-out zones in offices, and chill-out zones in offices. Google's London headquarters has £5,500 Metro Nap sleep pods equipped with music, changing lights and vibrating walls and floors, free food and drink, and a running track.
Vibrating walls and floors sounds a bit odd.
Yeah, it does, So a guy called Richard Alderson, founder of Career Shifters, which caters for people who want to change career because they found the career they're in too stressful. He says 1 in 10 people who come to us want to shift due to stress, burnout or depression. It's a serious problem, and overall it's highly positive that people are attempting to address it. But these architectural inventions alone won't address a fundamental culture of overwork or unrealistic expectations.
Well, we're always being told in this country, are we not, that we work many, many more hours than our counterparts in Europe.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to Europe, I'm always astonished by the fact that nobody seems to be doing anything. And it may be because you're on holiday.
Well, people in France never seem to work.
Well, no, I mean, wherever you go, there's people sort of sitting outside having coffee.
That's right.
There's people wandering about. There's no. It doesn't seem as though Paris or Munich or Madrid even.
It's a hive of activity.
It's a hive of activity the way that London is.
And when you go to the Mediterranean countries, they're sleeping all day. The old siestas and all that.
But maybe they're a lot less stressed out, though.
It says here, 6.5 billion a year is lost to the British economy, and a figure which just plucked out the air. But one interesting thing is, and this applies to where we are now, where we are actually now. One of the, stress buster facilities, which companies are increasingly installing, are interactive light installations to change the colour of your working environment.
Well, we have that in here.
It's happening now as we
but
work.
But I like it.
Is that making you less stressful?
Well, I'm not particularly stressed out.
Yeah?
I mean, I get stressed out occasionally when things are not going well.
Yes.
And I'm trying to send something or I'm trying to do something which
Yes.
is not working out. But when I'm sitting here with you, the only thing that stresses me out occasionally is you winding me up.
Yeah, well, I don't take any notice of that.
Don't you?
I don't take notice of you making stupid allegations like that.
Well, that's not true. I mean, you got very wound up with me earlier on, started shouting at me and insulting me.
No, I don't.
Some people would get stressed out under those circumstances.
No, not at
but I
all.
quite like the new studios. I like the ambient lighting. I like the way the ambient lighting changes.
Yes.
I find it very nice.
Well, did you realise it was a stress-busting facility?
I didn't know that.
Feature.
I didn't know that.
Ah, well, you see, you know now, because I've just told you,
Yeah,
see?
well, there we are. So now I feel less stressed already.
Yeah.
This is Talk Sport. We're going to talk about the Terminator next. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics, and of course, we've had the Terminator music, so this is the Star Wars music,
Yes.
which you will no doubt recognise because.
I thought that
you
was
know,
Superman, actually.
I thought it was Superman.
Yeah, it was.
You've not seen a Star Wars film, have you?
No, I haven't.
You're
no.
one of the few people I know
Yep.
who has not seen one.
Yep.
Well, I'm happy to tell you that we're going to be now in the company of a man called Eric Berger, Senior Space Editor for Ars Technica, because he's going to tell us all about some of the latest developments going on up in space. And Fedor, I'm right in saying, I think, is a cyber cosmonaut, which is going to be sent to the International Space Station. Vladimir Putin, your mate, wants to try and build some kind of robot army, we think. So we're going to talk to Eric and find out what it's all about. Eric, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you
hi,
very
Eric.
much indeed for joining us. Now, I mean, is it a step too far to liken this Fedor thing to the Terminator? In as much as, well, from what we understand, it doesn't have weapons capability, but it has the weapons capability kind of built into it, so that if you wanted it to fire weapons, it could.
Yeah, it's a step too far to say it has the intelligence of a Terminator, but apparently Russia has taught the robot to hold a gun and to fire a gun and to do it out of both hands at the same time.
Right. So more like Billy the Kid than the Terminator, then.
That's probably right, yeah.
Well, so what is the purpose, then, of this particular machine, Eric? I mean, he's surely not saying that... I mean... No matter how good it is, it's not going to be able to react as fast as the human brain in retaliating against an enemy. So I don't quite understand, this is sort of going backwards in my view, particularly if it's planned that they will form part of a moon landing operation, which the Americans did 50 years ago.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Dmitry Rogozin is the Russian deputy prime minister over the space and defense industries for the Russian Federation. And he says that no, they're not trying to create a Terminator, although it kind of looks like the Terminator. They're trying to develop automated AI systems. And so the idea is that, by teaching it to point and fire a gun, you could actually enable the robot to make, decisions and to get better aim and sort of, should I shoot that? Should I not shoot that? It's a little bit scary when you think about it, but they claim they're not making Terminators.
Well, I mean, they would claim that, wouldn't they? I mean, that's my view. I mean, if you're working
that's what I'd say.
Yeah, if you're working
I'm
in the
not trying to
Kremlin...
take over the world.
Yeah, if you're working in the Kremlin and somebody says, hey, Vlad, are you building some kind of robot army to take over the world, a bit like Skynet? You go, no, it'd be ridiculous. Of course not.
And this got conflated with the idea that they're going to send it into space. Rogozin, the Russian deputy prime minister, has said in the past they'd like to send Fyodor up to the station maybe in 2021, although I don't think it's going to happen that soon. Because NASA, as you may recall, several years ago sent its own robot, Robonaut, up to the space station, I think in 2014 or 2015, and it hasn't done much.
Right.
So Russia maybe wants to one-up them.
Why are the Russians going to the moon in 2021, Eric? What is what's the purpose of it? They've had access to moon rock and they know what's there and what isn't there. So why are they spending, billions of rubles they haven't got on doing something the US did, as I say, 40 years ago?
Well, the short answer is they're not. The Russian Space Agency has actually been cutting their budget. They don't have the budget to develop the big heavy lift rockets to go to the moon or a heavy land or a lander, that kind of thing. If they do go to the moon, it would be along with NASA and probably the Europeans.
Yes.
Probably by the end of the 2020s.
Yeah, no, exactly, because space now exists, exploration of space in other directions, doesn't it? Isn't the plan to get onto Mars eventually?
Eventually, NASA would like to do that, but there's a lot of people in Japan and Europe and in the United States as well, think that maybe Mars is a step too far and that really we ought to go back to the moon and use the resources there. Do you know there's ice at the poles of the moon that could be pretty useful if you wanted to turn it toward space exploration?
Yeah,
and I suppose the automation of space exploration, as indeed the possible future automation of weaponry, makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because you can send a lot more robots up into space without worrying about what's going to happen than sending astronauts.
That's exactly right. The idea is you could send a really capable robot to Mars or to somewhere else for $1 billion, and that would not get you very far if you wanted to send a human mission to Mars, even on a flyby mission, not even going down to the surface of the planet.
Yeah, exactly right. So I was going to say, as far as the space race is concerned, I mean, we've kind of got used to the idea that the International Space Station is now exactly that, and that people are communicating and cooperating with each other from every single country in the world. But is that changing, given the supposedly difficult situation now between the US and Russia?
It's kind of a complicated situation, but there is a space race, but it's really the private sector versus the public governments in some sense. So you guys know Elon Musk, he's building rockets. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, he's building rockets now too in the United States. And they're competing actually with Russia, with the French Ariane rockets, with Chinese rockets. And so there's kind of a competition between capitalism and government institutions. And it looks like, at least over the next 5 to 10 years, that the capitalists, the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos, are going to win because their rockets are probably going to be cheaper to launch.
Yep, no, I understand that, Eric, but you kind of get the impression now, don't you, that people are starting to think, well, hang on, haven't we got enough problems on Earth now that you've got, the new President Trump, sending huge convoys of aircraft carriers to North Korean Peninsula, of dropping huge bombs on Afghanistan, of threatening to take Syria out. I mean, don't people think, have we got enough problems here before we start sending even robots into space?
There are lots of problems on Earth, and everyone you talk to says that what they're doing in space could help solve the problems on Earth. NASA says it's going to space to help to study climate change and its effects here on Earth. Elon Musk wants to develop a colony on Mars in case the problems get so bad on Earth we destroy ourselves. And Jeff Bezos' plan is to simply move all the heavy industry off of Earth onto the moon and onto asteroids, and then basically turn Earth into a garden of sorts.
Well, it wouldn't be expensive to shuttle stuff from the moon back to Earth, would it? It's not that far.
Well, it's quite a long way.
That far.
No, it's not. It's about 250,000 miles. That's not that far.
250,000 miles, yeah. You say it as if it's, just around the corner.
Well, it's not far for a space rocket.
Cosmic-wise, I suppose it's not.
No.
But,
it's not. It's especially not far in terms of the amount of energy you need to get off the lunar surface and back to Earth. It takes a lot of energy in a rocket launch to get off the surface of the Earth. It doesn't take that much to get off the moon because it's got less gravity.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is, Eric, if we developed a method of, say, building bricks from moon dust or something like that, you could build millions of them or billions of them, put them into huge containers, and basically just ping them back on a sort of gravity loop, couldn't you, to Earth?
You could do something like that. I think maybe the next century the goal would be to build some kind of a solar factory on the moon and beam power back to Earth.
I see.
And then you could get rid of all the power production here on Earth.
Now that's interesting.
From coal and natural gas, things like that.
Do you mean like huge shields which would deflect more rays of the sun towards the Earth?
Actually, if you look at the lunar surface, there's lots of silica, so you could send robots up there to manufacture crude solar panels, strip them out all over the moon, and eventually collect enough power to beam it back to Earth.
That's brilliant. Well, that's a brilliant development.
Well, there's got to be more of this, isn't there? Because looking at the pictures of this Fedor robot, it does look, I don't know if you've seen it, Porky, I mean, it does look like something out of a science fiction movie.
Well,
right?
it looks like, do you know what it looks like to me, Eric? You'll be too young to remember. It looks like the robot on Fireball XL5.
A little bit, yeah. I didn't remember there was a robot on that.
Yeah, there was. You remember that, Eric?
It looks a little, he won't remember that, no.
Yeah. What was his name?
Me with that cultural reference.
No, I think
Fireball XL5 was not in America anyway, I don't think.
It was, and I think his name was...
a Jerry Anderson thing.
I think his name was Loney. I think that was his name. Yeah, believe it or not.
I think you're digressing. No, but what I'm saying, I suppose, Eric, is that, there's bound to be more of this. I mean, presumably if the Russians are working on this, then so are the Americans and so are the Europeans, and so there's bound to be more and more robots being used for this kind of thing. And they're bound to want to train them into all kinds of possible, future uses, like policing, like,
what about cleaning your home?
Well, I'm thinking more in terms of military uses.
Well, certainly military uses, but most things developed for the military have had some spin-off, haven't they, in domestic life?
Yeah, but you don't really want to clean it with a gun, do you?
Well,
Yeah,
course
but
not.
Fyodor coming at me with 2 guns is not someone I'd want to come into my house, I don't think.
Well, no, that's absolutely
But, I mean,
true.
there's no reason why you couldn't have a cleaner robot, I suppose, that guarded your house while you weren't there, and you give it a gun while you go out.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's true, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
especially in
You could do
America.
that.
But, presumably the Americans were not taken aback by seeing these pictures from Russia, that they knew this was
Well,
going
it's
on.
interesting. Pravda, the Russian mouthpiece, said that Americans were terrified after seeing images of this Russian robot. So
Yeah, well, I think they should.
I wasn't terrified.
No, absolutely.
You sound like a very level-headed person, Eric. What do you do at the Ars Technica place? I mean, you're the senior space editor there. I mean, what do you kind of look out for?
I write about space.
Yeah.
All of the above. From looking back at the moon landings, to looking ahead to what's coming down the line.
Okay, that's great.
And apart from Mars, what's the next big exciting thing that you're looking out for?
Well, the next big exciting thing is are we going to put together some kind of a coordinated program to go back to the moon? You know, the European Space Agency really is interested in that and kind of going back to the moon, not to visit, but to stay and to try to use some of the resources there we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric, thank you very much,
Eric.
Indeed, Eric Berger there
Very
from
kind of you.
Ars Technica. I think these are the future. I mean, I think we have seen the future.
Yeah.
This picture of this robot is going to be the future, and now that they've taught them how to shoot, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, but the thing is, MG, do you remember as a kid we used to watch a programme called Tomorrow's World?
Yes.
And Raymond somebody used to
Yes, I remember
host
it well.
Right.
Yeah, I can see his face. I can't remember his name.
I can as well. And every week we said, oh, that's amazing. You know, this new invention's going to take over
but
the
this
world.
has actually happened.
No, but the new invention on Tomorrow's World never took over the
No,
world.
but I think that's
Nothing
because-
that was ever in Tomorrow's World has ever happened.
I
It
bet
was
there
all
was
just a load of gobbledygook.
There was probably some things that came true.
Very
But that was
unlikely.
also because in the 60s there was lots of nonsense that
Yeah.
talks about the future.
Yeah.
Like we were all going to fly around with jetpacks strapped to us and all that
Well,
kind of
don't
thing.
remember,
But you can get a jetpack if you want to spend the money.
Yeah.
And you can fly around in one.
The
Just everybody's not doing it.
You know, Harold Wilson once, you know, the Prime Minister in the 60s, you know, a man who went to Bradford Grammar School, you know, just because I've devalued the pound does not mean that the pound in your pocket is worth less.
Somebody sent in this, by the way. Is
Yeah.
that the guy you're talking about from our Fireball XL5?
No, because he's the pilot Fireball XL5. But
No, okay.
they had a robot on board which did all the hard work.
Okay.
And I'm sure his name was.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
I think it was. But anyway, I was going to say Harold Wilson once
Yes.
produced an OXO cube, right? You know what they look like with
Right.
silver foil in it.
Yeah, you can still get them now.
You can still get
They
them now.
haven't
That's
changed.
Right, that's right. They haven't changed. And he actually said, in the very near future, a power pack this size will power a ship, an ocean liner, and an aircraft. This is the nuclear power of the future.
Well, do you know what? He wasn't that far wrong
Well,
because you can actually control all of those things from a chip
Yeah.
the size of half an OXO cube.
Yeah, but half an OXO cube is not going to drive an aircraft carrier.
Well, no, but it's going to control it, though.
Well,
And that's what he probably
didn't
meant.
say that. He said, you know, we'll be able to power an aircraft carrier with a piece of nuclear
if he was that bright,
fusion
what he
this
should have,
size.
What he should have known was that we wouldn't have been able to afford to buy an aircraft carrier,
Yeah.
so in fact we haven't got one.
Well, he was another one who bankrupted the country. He had to go to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout
That's
because he
right.
got it all wrong as well.
Yes, he did.
They always do.
Yeah, they do.
All prime
unfortunately,
ministers get it wrong.
Unfortunately, true.
Incompetent
This
people.
is Talk Sport.
I wish I was a spaceman, the fastest guy alive. I'd fly you around the universe in Fireball XL5. Way out in space together, conquerors of the sky. My heart would be a fireball.
See, I don't remember this. I think this was a couple of years
Yeah.
earlier than, because
Yeah.
there is 1 or 2 years between us.
Yes.
My era was Thunderbirds and
Yeah.
Stingray.
Yeah.
And Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons.
Yeah, Captain Scarlet and the
But I don't think I don't remember this at all.
Really? Oh, I do.
Fireball XL5.
Yeah, that
so
was-
where was it set then?
Oh, he's in space. It was a precursor to Star Trek, really.
Was it?
It was like a.
It's a pretty lame song, though, isn't it?
It doesn't even sound like a space song, does it? It sounds like a song to a children's
Yeah.
programme about nursery rhymes or
Right.
something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
By the way, here's a question for you, right?
Yes.
This was sent to me sometime earlier by a guy called David, I think, on Twitter.
Oh, yes.
But over in Whitechapel earlier yesterday,
Yes.
there was free beer handed out to the homeless.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I started that.
No, I know you
I was
did.
doing that a long time ago.
Well, I know you would. I know that you should
Yeah.
be claiming the rights to it, by
Well,
the way,
you
because
know,
people have roundly condemned the company that have done this because it's one of the big beer companies who were doing it.
Well, if you make somebody happy by giving them a drink, you know, to make them feel better, what's wrong with that?
Well, it was in Liverpool city centre, right? Stunned shoppers watched a Bud Light 4x4 park up near the subway in Whitechapel,
Yes.
where staff gifted out cans of lager to passers-by as part of a promotional campaign.
Really?
But apparently didn't have permission from the council to be there. And lots of rough sleepers in the nearby area apparently were given free beer as part of the promotion.
Why on earth do you need permission for an act of kindness? I don't see
Well,
it
I think
at
if
all.
you're operating in some kind of commercial activity, I think you need permission from the council. Otherwise,
right?
you could just set up a shop. And if you're running a shop, you might not be too happy. I mean, if you're running a pub, for example, in the middle of Liverpool, and some guy turns up in a van and starts giving free beer away, you're not going to be too happy, are you?
Well, yeah, but it's not a commercial activity, is it? It's,
Well, it is if it's being done by the company concerned.
Well, it's just like a soup kitchen type thing, isn't it? Listen, I'll tell you what I'll tell you about.
Well, I haven't finished telling you about this yet.
Oh, I thought you had. I'm sorry.
Well, you see, you think I've got 2 minutes to tell my story, then you get 10 minutes to tell yours.
No,
you get stuffed. I'm going to keep this going now for another 10 minutes.
Oh, well, go on then, yeah.
Another homeless
Bore
man.
the audience to death.
Another homeless man told the Liverpool Echo that he'd been given quite a few cans and handed some of them out to his mates.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so he was like doing the usual trick of going round twice, taking twice as much as
He said they were just handing them out to everyone, so I ended up with a trolley full.
Really? Yeah, well, that's, I suppose he was just taking advantage of a situation which doesn't really very often occur to the homeless, does it, eh?
Well, I mean, they're obviously very grateful when you handed out the free beer,
Well,
weren't
of course they were, yeah. I had free
City
pizza
Centre
sometimes.
Councillor Nick Small took a dim view of the marketing campaign, saying it was irresponsible, aggressive and wrong.
I don't know why you'd say that, you see, because I think it's rather kind to... You know, people might say, oh, you shouldn't be giving, homeless people beer. Homeless people like a beer as much as anybody else.
Yeah, I know, but
so I don't see a problem.
Well, if people who are living on the streets get bladdered, though, sometimes that can lead to difficulties, can't it?
Well, it can if it's out of control.
That's
But
what I mean.
if it's in a controlled environment, which this sounds like it is, then I think it's okay.
He further said, I've had reports from members of the public that they've seen street drinkers and other vulnerable residents being handed free cans of beer by Bud Light.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, you'd have to drink an awful lot of Bud Light to get any kind of buzz off it.
You
really,
would. You would indeed.
And not that I'm wishing in any way to give them a hard time.
And as the one of the rules of this show always has been bladderation in moderation.
Indeed.
Then I think moderation is okay.
Moderation is okay, and also, I mean, light beer has never really taken off in this country, has it? I mean, it's massive in America.
My sister, when she was a marketing guru in the drinks industry, introduced Miller Lite to this country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did it go well?
Went very well for a couple of years, and she was doing like promotions of boxing matches with Don King.
Oh yeah,
and flying around in Noel Edmonds' helicopter because
Edmonds' helicopter.
Yeah, because he was the guy they hired to.
Did he know at the time that you would often impersonate his brother?
No, he
how
wouldn't have done, no.
How embarrassing would that be if he'd known?
Well,
that your sister is in a helicopter with Noel Edmonds.
In fact, she went on his private plane once as well. Yeah, they flew from like somewhere to somewhere on a private plane.
What did she make of him?
She said he was a very nice guy, very amiable and that kind of stuff, highly professional and very driven and all that kind of stuff, which you'd expect of a bloke because he was very successful. He still is.
Well, he is, yeah.
He still comes up with, inventing games and things like that.
Now, somebody sent us a tweet about this Fireball XL5. Seems to have got a few people excited.
Yes.
Rumour has it these two will be replacing the two mics. Might get more sense from Zuni.
Zuni was the guy, not Looney. I said
Looney,
Looney, it was Zuni. That's Zuni. That was the guy, yeah. Well, he looks just like that cyber guy.
That's not a proper show. That's a kids' show.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is a lot of kids' shows, like, and you said Thunderbirds, actually had...
Thunderbirds was not so much a kids' show.
Actually had features in them which later, went on to become proper scientific development.
Absolutely.
Aeroplanes taking off without a runway and all that developed into what was called VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing aeroplanes.
Yes, indeed,
like
the Harrier jump jet.
Harrier jump jet, absolutely, yeah.
Tremendous.
So, it was fiction imitating fact.
So Campalot says the name of the robot when Fireball XL5 was Robert. I kid you not. Well, it looks like there was more than one robot.
Yeah, there's one robot, because Zuni was definitely a robot.
Zuni was another one.
He was, indeed.
Now, what did you want to tell me?
Well, what I'll tell you was, you won't believe it, but the latest holiday sort of gig, the unknown one, which is now developing.
What, you mean in addition to Fireball XL5 and Ulaanbaatar?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Is, over the last sort of 20, 30 years, people have gone out and watched dolphins playing and whale watching and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
The latest one, amazingly, is iceberg watching.
Iceberg watching?
Yeah. And what happens is, in Newfoundland, which is a province of Canada, right?
I've been there, yeah.
You've been there? Yeah, of course you have, yeah.
They speak a very odd language there. Very strange dialects of sort of Scottish and Liverpudlian mixed together.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, very
Because the
odd.
people that landed there had all come from the sort of west coast of Britain.
Yes.
At the various times when they were all coming.
Yes.
And they stopped there and they never moved any further.
Right,
And most
okay.
of them are from Liverpool and Scotland.
It's amazing. Anyway, what they have noticed for a number of years is because of the changing climatic nature of the world, is that these icebergs drift past their coast, huge ones, 150 feet high. So they've now decided to cash in on it. And people now go there and they say, no, we've got an iceberg report. There'll be one just coming up on the coast there in 2 days' time. And they wake up one morning and a 150-foot iceberg is...
You don't want to get too close, do you?
Well, they're only a few hundred feet off the actual coastline itself.
Right.
And by the way...
Did you see any icebergs when you went across the Atlantic on the QE2?
No.
You don't go far enough north, I suppose.
No, you don't go far enough north.
Well, I mean, presumably at some point, right,
Yeah.
the Titanic route would be not that much changed if you're going from Southampton to New York. I mean, you'd go the same way, wouldn't you?
Well, I suppose so, but I suppose it was the time of the year you went and all that kind of stuff. Although it was in the summer, we determined that, didn't we? The Titanic. It was out.
Yeah,
it was
well,
April.
You said
March,
that.
April.
I
Yeah,
thought,
it was.
See, I thought it was much
Yeah.
later than that. I thought for some reason it was October. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let me tell you, 9/10 of an iceberg is normally below water. Okay.
Yeah.
So it can be, if it's 100 feet above the water, it's 1,500 feet deep.
Yes,
So
and
this
it's
is
also a lot sort of wider as well, isn't it?
That's right. It's a huge block of ice. But at the moment, there's one along the Southern Shore Highway just outside the port of Ferryland
Right.
in Newfoundland, okay?
Yeah.
And
Oh, I'm just looking at pictures of it. It's
yeah,
massive, isn't it?
It is. And they move very slowly.
It says it's taller than the one that sank the Titanic.
That's right. It's bigger than the one that sunk the
Wow.
Titanic. It's on a stretch of ocean from Newfoundland to Labrador.
It's very impressive, actually.
It's very impressive on the Canadian mainland, and it's known as. It's the biggest one that they've ever seen,
Yeah.
and now it's becoming a huge tourist attraction.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It says the iceberg could have been formed when a chunk of ice up to 10,000 years old broke off a glacier in the Arctic. Large numbers of icebergs drift south into Iceberg Alley each year, although they're often locked into sea ice in the Arctic until late spring. But most float past the coast because of its size. This one appears to have become grounded in the shallow water. So it's not actually moving.
Right.
The 9/10 of the iceberg below the surface of the water has, just like a ship's keel, embedded itself in the seabed.
Right, I'm just going to tweet out this story, actually, because I think it's quite fascinating.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's not surprising it's attracting a load of tourists, but do you think it will sit there and melt then? Presumably it will. if
Well,
it's not moving.
I suppose it will eventually, but there's a company there called Iceberg Quest Ocean Tours, and they said business is booming. More and more icebergs are floating down this way, but this is the biggest they've ever seen.
Yeah.
They said this year alone, as many as 616 icebergs have been logged floating into shipping lanes.
Do you think that might suggest that the icebergs and the ice cap is melting then?
Well, more icebergs are coming down because
Yeah.
616 so far this year, 1/3 of the year. In the whole of last year, there were only 687.
Right.
So there's going to be like 2,000 icebergs this year, 3 times the number of last year.
Yes.
It's amazing,
So you'll
isn't
be
it?
able to see more of them. The funny thing that I noticed
Yeah.
about Newfoundland, when I went to Newfoundland, it was the middle of summer.
Yes.
And it was about, 35 degrees or something in New York when I
Yeah.
left. And when I got off the plane in Newfoundland, it was only about 17.
Right.
It was a lot colder.
Right.
And unfortunately, the airline lost my luggage.
They lost your
So I
luggage.
didn't have any clothes
not
apart
good.
from the clothes that I was wearing. Because I'd left in a hurry,
Yeah.
I was wearing a short sleeve shirt.
Yeah, it's not good.
So I didn't have any. I didn't have a jumper. I didn't have anything.
It's not
And
good.
they didn't find any of the clothes until I got back to New York.
It's not good.
So I ended up having to buy a load of stuff.
Not good. Now, talking about ice, right, there was
Yeah.
another thing I wanted to tell you, and this is that Mr. Putin is now getting very ambitious in the Arctic Circle.
Well, now that he's building it Terminators, I mean, that's not where it's going to end, is it?
Well, let me tell you this. They've also built the biggest man-made structure in the Arctic,
Yeah.
and it's to house a military base as part of Russia's ambition to grab swathes of the polar region
Yeah.
because it is very rich in oil.
Yes.
Now, the Kremlin have published now
Yeah.
the first pictures of their new Arctic trefoil military base. It's positioned on Alexandra Land, an island in the Arctic Ocean that is whipped by blizzards and roamed by polar bears, okay? But it's
Who's written this? Sounds like something you've written.
No, it's in one of my
There are
scientific
polar bears
journals.
roaming around.
From Russia, yeah, there
Yeah.
are. It's situated at 80 degrees north. It's built in the shape of a clover leaf and decorated in the red, blue, and white of the Russian tricolour.
Yes.
And it's an amazing structure. And they're making for years, both the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese have been building secret bases in the Arctic because of the oil presence there. But this says they're not even making it secret. At least 150 military personnel will be stationed there permanently, OK?
Right.
And on a visit last month to Alexandra Land, the place was valued at $30 trillion of mineral rights.
Goodness gracious me. We'll have to come back to that because we're out of time. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the two mics on Talk Sport. Coming up in this hour, it is of course time for Porkyvision. We've had Ask Porky, we have had no postman pork this week yet, but we may well do one tomorrow. Of course, if you want to send in some stuff, we haven't had time to sift through it all, I'm afraid, but we may well get to that later on. Also, of course, we'll be taking loads more of your tweets. You can tweet us at the two mics,
indeed,
at Mike Parry, at IROMG, or go and have a look at our Facebook page as well, which is the two mics. You're listening to the two mics, it's me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. Now, I see that your good friend Ms. Victoria Beckham, i.e. Posh Spice, is on the front page of some of the papers, showing off her OBE that she got from the Palace yesterday. And the Sun says, Posh, this is me not wanting any publicity for my OBE, which is probably, in your words, a bit harsh.
What do you mean?
Well, because they were sort of having a go, saying that she tries to hide and go undercover to get the OBE, but they've got her. She's got a sheet over herself in the back seat of the car.
Yeah, well, all she's trying to do is try to appear to be relatively normal, and of course, you can't be normal if you are the wife of David Beckham, but also
why is she hardly under a sheet, though?
A member of the Spice Girls, and now one of the world's most famous fashion designers. Well, I suppose she's... sorry, what do you mean she's got a sheet over?
Well, she's hiding under a sheet in the back of the car, according to the paper.
Oh, really? Which one?
The Sun.
Really?
Yeah. And I think it's partly because I've come across this before. I once covered John McEnroe's wedding to Tatum O'Neill.
Yes.
And it was in the days when people would get an awful lot of money for flogging the rights to their wedding to OK Magazine or Hello Magazine, I think it was in that case. Yeah. And so what they did was, they erected, it was out in Long Island.
Oh, huge tents.
They erected, this massive sort of selection of sheets that would go over the church. So the cars that were coming to the church would pull inside the sheet area.
Yes.
And they would then get out of the car. So nobody could see who they were.
That's right.
Nobody could see them getting out. So it wasn't just the bride and groom, but it was the guests as well.
Yes.
Right. And a local crowd had gathered in this little town in Oyster Bay, I think it was, near Long Island, somewhere in Long Island.
Yeah.
And all the photographers who were there were getting royally, upset about it. So they started to get all these people to chant, show your face, show your face.
Yeah.
And it became this massive chant.
That's right.
So in the end, they had to come out.
Yes.
And actually pose.
Yes, I remember
because people were getting so fed up. Well, you weren't there.
No, I remember seeing it on newsreels and that kind of stuff, because I tell you what, when one of the other Spice Girls got married, and that would have been Scary Spice, like Mel C, not only did they have all the sheep business...
Mel B? I never remember, isn't it Mel B?
No, Mel C is Scary Spice.
Is
Mel B was Sporty Spice,
okay.
Not only did they have all the sheets all over the place...
it's not the other way around? I think it's
the other way around. No, I'm certain it's not the other way around. Okay?
All right.
I know a lot about the Spice Girls, all right?
Well, I'm just asking you.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm just telling you, don't keep interrupting.
Well, I have to interrupt you, otherwise you'd never shut up.
And as well as the sheets and the big tents, what are the big tents called? Marquees. Marquees. They also had... canvas walkways between, this marquee and the entertainment marquee and the house that it took place in. So no helicopters could take overhead pictures.
Right.
And, of course, to remember, initially, when it all started, all this ridiculous nonsense about, hiding your face from a camera because you were being paid money from a magazine.
Yeah.
All these celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson used to turn up in places in the back of a bread van, didn't they?
Well, they did. And this was the thing, because part of the contract said, if you allow any pictures of the wedding or any pictures of anything at all with you and that person to get anywhere else, then we won't pay you the money.
I'm sure it was one of the Elizabeth Taylor weddings when... Do you remember that guy, Barry, who was...
The guy, Larry, you mean? It was Larry, wasn't it?
Larry Fortensky was the guy she married to, but there was a journalist we knew on Star magazine.
Yes.
Who was related to one of Ivor Key's daughters or something, called Parry, wasn't
I know the guy you mean. Yeah, he ended up working in TV, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And
I never really knew him very well.
And the guy was a drama queen as a journalist. He tried to sort of emulate what British tabloid journalists did, but he wasn't very good at it. So he used to adopt, over-the-top American tactics.
Yes.
And you would often sort of see him in a phone box nearby to where Elizabeth Taylor was about to turn up, you know, for like the signing of the wedding scroll or something like that.
Which she'd done quite a few times.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember one time he was standing in this phone booth and he had his news desk on the other line. And he'd say, "Okay, guys," he said, "I'm covering this one now and, nothing's going to escape me. As I speak to you, there's a van coming down the street. I think this is Elizabeth Taylor in the back of the bread van. Okay, guys. 9, 8, 7,
Well, it just became a
6,
ridiculous thing, didn't it?
5, 4, no, it's just a bread van with a load of bread in it, and all this kind of stuff, way over the top.
I know.
Yeah.
Absolute madness. By the way, I've just got a tweet here from Brendan. He says, Mel B was Scary Spice Porky, you plank. So I'd quite like an apology from you now.
What's that?
For shouting at me. Well, because you got it wrong. Mel B was Scary Spice. Mel C was Sporty.
That's right, exactly, yeah.
So, which is opposite of what you said.
No.
So I was interrupting you correctly.
David
even says this. Many years ago, I was asked by a market research company to spend 3 hours tasting beer. It was for the launch of Miller Lite.
Oh,
so maybe
really?
your sister knew about that.
Yeah, maybe she did, yeah. Very fascinating indeed.
Dan Coulter says, did you plonkers know this is Talk Sport, not Talk something which I can't say? Stop talking rubbish and talk about football, you idiots.
Okay, which...
Well, Dan, if it says Talk Sport, then why would you assume that we would talk about football? Surely we would talk about sport. And we were just talking about Sporty Spice, which in my book is about sport. So Talk Sport and Sporty Spice go together. So, Dan, you are a plank of the night.
You are. And don't you realise that iceberg spotting could soon be an Olympic event?
Yes, could also be about lettuce, iceberg spotting.
Yeah.
I mean, you love these people who think they go through the world of where we live and only talk about sport. Yeah, I only talk about sport. Imagine you meet them in the pub and you go, "Did you see that film last night? Was it about sport?"
Yeah, exactly.
No, well, I don't want to talk about it then.
Yeah, exactly.
I only want to talk about sport.
Now, remember...
That's all I ever talk about.
It's true.
I'm a complete idiot.
Yeah. Now, do you remember we talked last week about the Paul Breen Turner, who unfortunately lives on some hovel of a boat?
Well, I mean, I think you're being a bit unkind.
Am I?
Well, because we haven't seen the boat, right?
Well, yeah.
It may well be a hovel,
Yeah.
but because we haven't seen it, we can't judge it yet. What I think we should be careful of as well is with Mr. Paul Breen Turner, because he's now in the lion's den of the sort of Straits of Gibraltar.
Yes.
We should probably get updates from him as to how things are going.
Well, that's right, on the
Because
tension
we haven't
with
heard from
Gibraltar.
him. We haven't heard from him for a while.
But anyway, listen, what I thought I'd tell you about is the fact that more and more people are turning to living on boats in this country, okay?
Right.
So you can actually get a boat. I mean, think about, buying any kind of a flat in London.
Yeah.
You're talking at £250,000, £300,000, something very basic.
No chance, yeah.
And $500,000, $600,000 for one bedroom, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But actually, if you went down to a canal in West London, there is a boat there for sale for $130,000.
Is that down sort of Little Venice way?
I don't think it is, actually. It says, what's this? It just says it's a West London pad.
West London, okay.
And I think it's at the bottom of Cheney Walk. You know the one I'm talking about? Just on the left there,
Yeah,
on
it's,
the
sort
river.
of, it's a bit that connects up with the river, doesn't it?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can get one there for $130. But if you go to Northamptonshire, you can buy a barge there, like a longboat, at Wilton Marina for $29,950.
Right. But
make
can
it
you,
your home.
I suppose the question would be, is if you went to buy one in a place where it was cheaper, could you then bring it to London and berth it? I presume the berths are quite expensive.
The berth would be very expensive.
And
so,
it's,
for
and
instance,
it's not easy to find one, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, for instance, in Cheshire, 3-berth, 35-foot narrow boat, a perfect floating home, it's advertised as. It's moored at Anderton Marina, which I know well, by the Trent and Mersey Canal near Northwich, in Cheshire.
In Cheshire, yes.
And it will cost you £25,000.
Is that just for the actual structure of the boat?
Yeah, and then you've got to pay some service charges and berth and all that.
And can you hook it up to electricity and all that? Because you know how sometimes when you're in a caravan park, you can hook up your caravan to the water.
I don't
and
know the answer to that. If you can't, you have a generator on board, and then you sort of file the generator. But anyway, because of the fact that property is so expensive, there are now 15,000 people living on boats in this country.
Yeah.
these barges. These
well, I
long
suppose.
boats.
I mean, if you don't mind the smallness of the boat, because you have a very big boat. I mean, I think you'd get very claustrophobic in it. I mean, have you ever been in one of those canal boats? They're tiny.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to dip your head down to get inside.
That's right. Yeah.
You pretty much have to walk around with your head sort of bowed, and there's not really a lot of room to cook anything. A very small cooker
wouldn't suit me.
I mean, it's like living in a caravan, really, without wheels.
It's like living in a sort of little bedsit, really, isn't it?
I mean, I know someone who, when she first moved to London, lived on a boat.
Right.
On the Thames.
Yes.
But it was like, it wasn't in a canal situation, it was actually quite a big boat.
Right.
And if you come down to the East London, you can see sometimes there are boats that people have lived on, which are actually quite sizable.
Yeah.
But that's very rare, I think, because I'm sure that they're clamping down on that.
When I first came to London, there was a guy who was a reporter on the Standard, the Evening Standard.
Yeah.
And he'd come from somewhere else in the provinces to live in London, and he took out a lease on a boat.
Right.
At the place I've just told you about, the Cheney Walk place.
Yes.
And it was quite big. I mean, in the sense that it was more like a barge, like an ark.
Yes.
It was more like an ark than a narrow boat. And we went to a party there. It was his housewarming party, and there was a sort of charm about it, going up the gangplank and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, but it's got a charm until you get fed up with it, or you fall off the gangplank.
Well, not only that, but the charm, it was very short-lived, I would imagine. But a few years later, quite near where you live now in Surrey Quays.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's still there, but there was a floating pub called the Wibbly Wobbly.
Yes, you mentioned this before. I think it is still there. People have said it's still there. I've never been there.
But why don't we go and have a look?
Well, we keep saying we're going to do that, don't we?
Yeah, we should, yeah. But the attraction of that is that if you were intoxicated, you didn't know whether the boat was moving or not, but something was moving beneath your feet.
Yes.
And that was always the way you could salve your conscience.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, maybe now the summer is upon us, or coming, we should go there one afternoon.
Good idea.
Perhaps in June.
Yes.
That might be a good idea. This is Talk Sport.
Walking down the street, pretty woman, the kind I like to meet, pretty woman.
Now, we haven't updated the old audience much yet on the doings of the day politically, right? But I was rather amused to watch George Osborne being interviewed. And many people have made fun of George Osborne being interviewed because they thought he looked a bit like David Brent. Because when he was asked by one of the interviewers about, how would you like to be remembered?
Yeah.
He basically said, I'd like to be remembered as someone who left Britain in better shape than when I found it.
No, you didn't.
Which all sounded terribly sort of self-serving.
No, that's not even true anyway.
Well, of course
he was a hopeless chancellor.
He was awful.
Hopeless chancellor who put up taxes and reduced people's aspirations in life and basically didn't understand his job.
Well, I was reminded, because I'd forgotten, like you do, about the pasty sort of fiasco. Do you remember when he was going to put VAT on pasties and he couldn't work out how to do it?
He couldn't work out whether it was hot food or cold food.
Whether it's hot food or cold food, or whether it's when it's served cold, you put VAT on it.
That's right.
Or whether when they heat it up, you have to put VAT on it. It was an absolute disaster.
Absolute disaster and complete fiasco. And by the way, that was only one aspect of that particular budget, which I think was in 11. No, it was...
I couldn't tell you what year it was.
No, I can, because it was his first budget. So it was the first coalition budget, and that...
Couldn't have been that long ago, could it?
Yeah, well, it's 7 years ago.
It could be. I mean, you may be right.
So I think it was 2011.
Yeah,
I think it was 2011, and it was, and every single policy announced that day and that afternoon, the budget had to eventually be backtracked on, and he lost complete credibility. But somehow David Cameron, because he was his best mate, kept him on. But you're absolutely right. Yeah.
No, but what was interesting as well is that, of course, one of the reasons he was being interviewed is because he's announced, because of the early call of the election, that he's going to step down as an MP, which many people said he should when he was appointed editor of the Evening Standard, right?
Yeah.
Now, you and I have had various views on the idea that he got that job.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what's really terrible is the day that it was announced that he was getting the job as editor of the Evening Standard, and yesterday, the day that he announced he was stepping down as MP, both stories did not appear in the main edition of the Evening Standard.
No, exactly.
Because it was too late.
Yeah.
And apparently they had to do a slip edition, which for those people who don't know, is like a sort of emergency, replacement of a couple of pages.
Yeah.
Because he didn't even have the nous or the brains to actually announce it officially in the Evening Standard that he was, one, becoming the editor, and two, that he was quitting his job.
Could have been the lead story tomorrow, couldn't it?
Well, it should have been the lead story yesterday.
Yeah, well, I mean, but when
that's the point.
The day he chose on which to do it, it could have been the lead story.
That's
absolutely.
what I mean.
Yeah. Why are we playing
plank.
Pretty Woman now, by the way?
Pretty Woman, yes, because Julia Roberts, if you will remember from the movie, who's the star of Pretty Woman, has been named the world's most beautiful woman.
Yes.
And, I would say
that, really.
it is hard to argue with
Yeah,
it because she's
yeah.
a magnificent actress, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, she's probably now, I couldn't tell you how old she is now, but every time I see pictures of her, she doesn't look any different.
No, I agree.
And so I think she's one of those ageless beauties.
Yes.
And she will continue to be beautiful
Yes.
No matter what age she is.
Couldn't argue with that. That's great. I didn't like that film much, Pretty Woman.
Well, it's a bit daft, isn't it?
Well, the whole idea that a millionaire or billionaire businessman would suddenly decide to get romantically involved with a street hooker, which is what she was, is ludicrous.
Well, it is rather, isn't it?
Completely ludicrous.
I mean, there may have been situations where it's happened.
No, but there may have been situations where, every, once a month or something, he might pay a lady for services.
Yes.
Because that was her profession, and had been for a number of years. But to actually say, it's Eliza Doolittle with sex, isn't it? I'll take you off the streets and make you a lady.
Right.
Ludicrous.
It is ludicrous.
Yeah.
And the idea that even if he was interested in paying for sex, that he would, as you say, take one off the street.
Yes.
And wouldn't just ring some, high-class escort service.
Exactly.
Is kind of mad.
Exactly.
But apparently, she's been named the world's most beautiful woman by People magazine, right? For a record-setting 5th time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
so nobody else has been named that. She's not been named 5 years in a row, but, they always have the world's sexiest man, world's sexiest woman or whatever.
You see, I would say Kelly Brook was a better-looking woman than Julia Roberts, but Kelly Brook is not a high-profile actress.
And certainly not in America.
Kelly Brook is a lingerie model.
She's
very good at.
Some of the films she's been in haven't exactly been what you might call Oscar quality.
Look, I don't want to knock a young lady who's, done ever so well in life. She's very wealthy because she's been very successful at what she did, which is like glamour. But anything she's ever done on television has not worked.
Well, I mean, she was in that film Piranha, wasn't she?
Nothing's worked. She did a film with that guy she went out with, Billy Zane. That was a complete and terrible flop. She's had TV series.
He was in Titanic, I think, wasn't
he? He was, which have started but never ended because they weren't successful. I mean, she was even appointed, wasn't she, at one stage, a judge in one of Simon Cowell's shows, but it lasted about 2 or 3 episodes or something, and then they changed the judges around again.
Yeah, was that one of the Britain's Got Talent scenarios, or an X Factor or something?
X Factor or something like that. I don't know, something like that. But I mean, if she sticks to what she does best, which is looking great in pictures, then she's, going to be as successful for a long, long time.
Indeed.
Because she's very good at it.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Craig says this, have you ever seen Dave Gilmour's boat called Astoria converted into a studio somewhere on the Thames?
No.
I haven't seen that.
I once saw the original Richard Branson boat that he lived on in Little Venice.
Okay.
Which,
which presumably was quite a luxurious narrowboat.
He used to interview, Mike Oldfield and people in it, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was his London pad, so to speak. It's underneath the flyover of the Westway.
Oh, okay.
Where the canal snake's underneath it.
David says this, I think the Cheney Walk location boat gets a Chelsea postcode, which can open doors.
Well, it certainly could.
Yeah, I suppose so. Now, a couple of people are telling me that the Wibbly Wobbly is no longer a going concern.
Well, there you go.
That it's not, because the last time we mentioned it, I think was a year or so maybe ago.
Yeah.
And people said then that you could still go and have a drink there, but apparently it's shut down now.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, what's your view on foie gras?
Foie gras?
Yeah.
It's very rich. I do eat it from time to time.
But don't you think it should be banned?
No.
Oh, it's disgusting.
I'm not in favour of banning things.
Well, I'm in favour of banning torturing animals.
No, you're not.
I am.
Well, no, because if you're going to start with foie gras, then you're going to end with all kinds of other things. I mean, have you ever seen what they do to animals in abattoirs? I mean, if you're going to ban foie gras, you might as well ban all meat.
But this is persistently and individually horrible to provide a luxury food. Now, there's a pub a pub restaurant actually called the Bridge Inn. It's at Calver in Derbyshire, right? And they've been subject to a lot of protests because they serve foie gras.
Right.
Now, foie gras is it's a very acquired taste, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it depends if you like pâté or not. Do you like pâté?
Yeah, I like pâté, but I wouldn't eat foie gras because of the way it's produced.
Yeah, my preferred pâté is actually rougher. Like they call it pâté de campagne, which is
you
more
mean
chunky.
Brussels pâté?
Yeah, a bit more chunky. I'm not a massive fan of smooth pâté.
Oh, I like smooth pâté.
And foie gras is very smooth, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost melt in the mouth smooth, and it's so rich that in fact it's not something I could eat very often, and I very rarely eat it. But I wouldn't absolutely go out of my way to avoid it and say to somebody, it's a bit like with Italian restaurants,
Yes.
You go to an Italian restaurant, I don't consider it a proper Italian restaurant unless they serve veal. And some Italian restaurants don't serve veal because they think it's cruel.
Yeah.
But I think if you're not going to serve veal, then you're not a real Italian restaurant.
Well, I haven't got anything against veal, to be honest. I mean, that's part of the food chain. But I don't like the foie gras thing. I don't like the pictures I've seen of it, of people holding a duck by the throat and then forcing a tube down its throat.
It's not very pleasant. But if you saw pictures of the way that the animals are killed in abattoirs...
Yeah, but you don't. They're not public.
Yeah, but the reason but there's a reason for that. It's because the usual kind of people that make a lot of noise about individual things have decided that foie gras should be targeted. So therefore you see those pictures, which makes you feel uneasy, which probably makes you not eat it.
Well, what I would say about foie gras is, look, there's no alternative to meat, so therefore we have to have abattoirs and we have to, create a food chain. But there are alternatives to foie gras.
Yeah.
You don't have to have that particular pate.
You don't have to have it.
You can have Belgian pate, you can have Brussels pate, smooth pate.
But it's still all about fattening up something to the point where its liver becomes eatable.
Well, yes, but not in such a... I mean, they do it so speedily. That's the whole idea of foie gras.
Yeah.
That it usually comes out of animals which are less than a year old or something like that. And, it's really horrible stuff.
Well, I don't think it's a pleasant thing, but I'm just not generally in favour of banning anything.
Yeah, well,
I mean, if in fact the world decides that they don't want to eat this kind of food because it is the subject of too much cruelty, then it will eventually die out. Yeah. And I'm sure there's lots more people now who don't eat it because they don't want a stigma of doing so.
Maybe.
In the same way that a lot of people don't eat veal.
No, that's true.
A lot of people think it's cruel to eat veal, and so they will not go to a restaurant that holds it.
Yeah, could be right. Talking about animals,
yeah.
How many foxes did you see on the way to work tonight?
Actually, not that many. I think I only saw one.
I saw two.
I only saw one.
Now,
but they're very, very mangy now.
Well, the thing is, the urban fox now is becoming, more populous than the foxes in the countryside.
Yeah.
Now, for instance, Bournemouth, which you would say is, rather a nice, genteel type of place, has now become the fox capital of this country.
Has it?
It's got 23 foxes per square kilometre.
Right.
I don't know why they measure it in kilometres.
Is that because people are feeding them?
Well, you wouldn't believe it, but people actually give them sausages and slices of chicken and all this kind of stuff.
I mean, your sister lives in quite a rural part of Bournemouth, quite a leafy road. Do you see them there?
Yes, it backs onto a golf course, and you see them sort of trailing across the lawn sometimes.
Right.
But, for instance, urban fox numbers have now more than quadrupled in the last 20 years. Bournemouth's got the highest concentration in Britain. The booming population means there are likely to be more red foxes per square kilometre in urban areas than there are now in the countryside.
Well, this is what I was saying to you the other night. I see the occasional fox down in Sussex, and if I do see it, it's a thing of great beauty. It's very red, very, very sort of healthy looking. Yeah. Whereas now, if you see them in London, they're almost black, some of them. They're so filthy.
Yeah, in some towns, there is now one fox for every 300 people, whereas in the 1990s, that figure was one fox to 33,000 people.
Yeah,
They've
right.
absolutely mushroomed the numbers.
Yeah, I bet.
They're tagging foxes now to see, whether they're, breeding in abnormally large numbers. But the problem is people are adopting them as pets. Not pets that they take into their homes, but that they look after in their gardens and that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
And that's because the foxes are losing some of their sort of... wild instincts.
Well, that's because they're living around the back of sort of bin collecting
That's
areas,
right.
and they're living in hedges, and they're
That's
living
right.
in parks, and they're
That's
not
right.
living anywhere near the country.
Absolutely.
I don't know what you do, though. I mean, because, again, you can't go around killing them, can you?
Well, you can.
Well, isn't that cruel?
Is it cruel to shoot a fox and you kill it stone dead with a bullet?
Well, it's pretty cruel if you're the fox.
Well, you don't know anything about it. When you're shot dead, that's why I can't understand why people who want to get rid of other people who've offended them just shoot them dead, because you don't even know you're being killed.
Well, still.
Once you've got a bullet through your head, that's it. Boom, you just go out. So I would terrify somebody before I killed them,
Would
just
you?
to let them know.